state revenue line up to $18.8 million increase. So it's a total projected increase of $24 million, so that's an increase of $8.3 million from what we had in the superintendent's budget. After that, the rest of our slides are the exact same slides that we had in the previous presentation. I realized we didn't get through all the slides in the last one, but I'm going to quickly actually jump to the end to show you the slide that I did add based on the discussion that we had in our last work session.
Okay.
So wanted to show you what, with the additional revenue from the state worked in, what that does to our funding gap, and that's our scenario one, so that first column, the superintendent's budget. It takes our funding gap down to about $5.8 million. In scenario two, it's if we increase into the full phase 4, we're adding $7 million to the baseline expenditure budget that was in the superintendent's budget. It brings our funding gap up to $12.8 million, almost 12.9. And then in scenario 3, it's that full phase 4 plus roughly $1,000 increase to our base budget up to $51,500. If you recall, we're at $50,525 right now, so it's technically $975, but kind of a rounded $1,000. So that brings our funding gap up to $17.9 million. I do want to add that on top of that funding gap, already baked into the assumptions is a $5 million increase in our local transfer. So the total request to the county, you would add $5 million to that funding gap. So right now, our amended scenario 1 for the superintendent's budget would actually be almost $11 million that we're requesting from the county, and then 17.9, and then 20.
Wait, can you say that again? The $5 million?
So you would add the
You're
5 million.
subtracting it out
Yeah,
in terms of what
you're
you're
adding.
asking.
You're asking for the 5 million, so
Plus
it's
Yeah.
10.8.
Oh, plus that.
Right.
Yeah, so in our projected revenue is $5 million, so
Gotcha.
the total
So
request from the
different
county is that funding gap plus $5 million.
All right, cool. I mean, not, but thank you.
Yeah,
Do you have those in percentages of increase in the county?
I can get them to you very easily, yeah.
But you're on them right now, I'm just curious, because we talk about the increase per year.
So the easiest one actually is what's the 5.5 gap plus the the $5 million alone is a 3% increase. So, roughly 6% if we did the $10 million. I can get you the exact numbers.
Mr. Fulmer, I thought it was 6.5% was the year over year.
So that's the total expenditure increase.
Okay.
But the increase in the local transfer
Okay.
is 2.96 if it's just the $5 million that's assumed. But I didn't have it calculated for what it would be with the funding that we added into it.
So, Ms. Halsted, do you have other questions? You asked if we were gonna hold questions. Do you wanna
Yeah, I was
start
just
us
gonna
with
ask
questions?
about
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
are we 100% certain we're getting the 8.3 million?
No.
So
We're
That's
still
fine.
there,
100% certain, no. We still have to wait for the governor to sign the budget.
okay.
But the General Assembly, so the House and the Senate both agreed, they matched dollar for dollar as far as recurring operating dollars
Okay,
at that 8.3 million, and then they've now voted on a budget together to have one single General Assembly budget, and that's that $8.3 million increase.
do we have any indicators it'll be not signed?
No.
I
I
know
don't
you
think there's
don't
gonna be
know.
any significant
Right.
adjustments to it at this point.
Okay. I just don't, I'm worried about the confusion,
Mhm.
if it changes again, or if something happens, because we're banking a lot on it.
Right.
So I'm just worried about
Well,
it being
we
too
have to
confusing.
base our numbers on something, and that's the best, since both the House and the Senate believe, the change will kind of
Do
sit
you
this.
know what the state budget or the General Assembly budget decided as far as bonuses? Because I remember there were two different versions and neither of them were mentioned in that 8 million.
So, I believe, waiting on confirmation, but what I was hearing is that it was the FY25 option, so it would have to be paid out in this current year, not in FY26. Which actually, to us, is beneficial if it's in FY26, because there's a little bit more money, because of the way they were calculating it, that money went up in FY26.
So where do we, if that were to come to pass, how do we pay for that?
So,
You're allowed
they
to.
calculated based on $1,000 per SOQ position, but they were giving flexibility, and we're waiting on the final language of all
What
of
that
this.
flexibility is?
Flexibility of that we could reduce that $1,000 so that we could afford to pay everybody with no local match. that we
Okay.
could use all of that state money to pay it. So it comes out to about $700 per employee, but what I'm working on is if, do we have money in our fleet fund, school nutrition fund, where they could go ahead and pay for their employees, and that helps us up that dollar amount, so it's
Is that
enough.
only for licensed staff, or does that include support staff?
They give us $1,000 for SOQ positions,
Oh, period.
yes.
So when you say the 700, that's for all staff?
It would be
Which-
every
this is-
staff
this is
member,
part
yes.
of-
Because we-
different-
we-
that's not part of the education.
We go
Yeah.
above and beyond as
Yes, I'm just making sure that that
so-
includes
For
everybody.
that.
Yeah.
But he's still not sure, like,
Yeah,
that's his.
yeah.
I just worry about them
The-
telling us we have to pay for
This money
something
is
that
our
we
job.
haven't
Right.
budgeted
That
for
money
this
is the
year,
job.
and that's money we have to,
But I think that's why they
Okay.
gave the flexibility, is to not
Okay.
put that on
I
the
would
school
think
division
we
or the
should
local government to try to
do
come up with that
this,
match
since
if
this
it
money
wasn't
is
available.
Is
Medicaid.
it built into these
It is not built
scenarios?
into this, it's
No.
completely
So-
separate.
Should be
then-
safe.
I mean, it's for
We
this
might
year.
This.
It's for FY '25.
The one ending June 30th, but
Right.
you said that
I think right
it
now
sounds like
it's-
they may let us do it
it's
next year,
hard
but
to
the
No.
bottom line is, where's that money gonna come from?
that was my
If
question.
it's not in one of these scenarios, if they let us.
Because
do
this is the FY
It was separate,
'26.
it was a separate pot of money, they were giving us one-time
So
money.
that's not included in the 8.3
yeah.
additional?
Because that-
Oh, okay, oh,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's free
It's in
money.
addition to the 8.3.
Yes.
Okay.
Cause it's, we look at it as restricted funds, it has to go towards that, so we wouldn't be able to take that money and use it elsewhere.
But they are gonna give us the full 1,000 for SOQ versus just the state share, which is good.
Correct. Yeah.
Because again, if it has to be FY '25 and we've got like 4 months left in
Yeah.
FY '25 and we have to come up with that or
Or a match
be
of
really
some sort,
unpopular.
yeah.
So,
But I think we all understand a little bit of caution right now,
Always.
given everything that's happening in
Oh,
the
yes.
state of Virginia in terms of.
Well, that's totally on top of this though,
Right.
that's almost like a
Okay.
whole different page
It's like a,
that we're looking
Right,
at.
correct,
in addition
correct,
to, that we don't
correct.
even have to.
But we are saying it and people are gonna think that,
Oh.
and
It's a
I'm-
done deal, and
right,
it's
and
not.
it's not a done deal.
Yeah, and when you vote tonight, it's not included in that
Right.
discussion, we're not
Right.
making that determination right now until we get
That's
the.
a wait and see.
I just don't want anybody listening saying, oh, we're gonna get, and it's like, we don't know yet.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, anything we vote on is not,
Right.
it's all pending
It's all
appropriation from other people.
yeah.
And there was talk about other state employees, so the county might be getting funding for some of their employees as well. So it'll probably, it's gonna come up again anyways, and how we
Yeah.
calculate that.
Who else has questions, comments on budget for tonight?
what is the increase to base amount, just
It's $1,000.
1,000?
It was
Nine
Just
1,000.
across the board?
Yes, so everybody, so the 3%
It
differentials,
just moves it on,
just
it
moves
moves the whole
everybody up.
scale up $1,000.
Yeah. And the only reason I bring it
And
up
it's
is,
not gonna be, the steps aren't gonna be 3%, because they won't.
No, it
They will be
They will.
3% for,
Yeah, so
up
we,
through phase 3, and then if we,
do phase.
if we do phase 4, it would be all the way through
Year
through
20.
phase 4, year 20.
yes.
Scenario 2 is,
So what concerns me is that we haven't increased the base for 2 years?
We have increased it.
But yeah, but not,
this year it's only a $25 increase, last year actually was a $500
Yeah,
increase, so we did increase it, but
last year.
we're falling
We're
behind.
slipping behind Spotsy and we're slipping behind Prince William.
No,
And
we're
where?
still behind Fredericksburg.
and we're slipping behind Fredericksburg. So the problem is when we go to job fairs, our primary goal is to recruit and attract and retain. And they may not even stop at our table if there's this huge difference. I mean, we can't fix the Prince William difference, but I don't wanna lose to Spotsy. And the problem is, if we don't start adjusting the base, then next year we could be in a bigger hole, because they're going to keep increasing theirs. And then it becomes harder to fix, and instead of it being 5.8 million, it could be significantly more. So that's my concern. And since this is our ask, my preference would be phase 4 and the adjustment to base.
Where does this leave us, and I guess
Scenario 3.
back on the superintendent's
Scenario
budget
3
as
is
far
always,
as
yeah.
our service scale,
Under
the
these
support
ones.
staff?
You know, if I'd known, I thought
so
it would
we're-
be good
we're-
to Scott.
We're doing the phase
Oh,
2,
good.
so we're adjusting it. The service scale is, it's the same concept of what we're trying to achieve with the teacher scale, but like in FY '22, we kind of did a little bit of an adjustment to the service scale anyway, so a lot of their steps were adjusted, so they're like at 2.67% differentials, but not the full 3%. So last year was the biggest investment in the service scale for that phase 1, because we were taking away the cap 2, we had people capped at 15, and we let them go all the way up, and then now we're adjusting, from 5 to 10, that 2.67 up to that 3% is what that phase 2 is.
So it
So
would
it-
give us the full phase 2 for
Yeah,
the
so that was
service.
already in the superintendent's budget,
Okay.
so it's maintaining that. And it's, for teachers and service, it was an average of a little over 3%, 3.04%, I think for teachers was kind of the.
I'm having a hard time with the math here, okay? The adding 1,000 to the base. If you add 1,000 to 50,000, it's 2%. If you add it to 100,000, it's 1%. If you add it to 70,000, it's about 1.5%. So if we're adding that to the base without changing the gap,
But-
no, let me just ask Chris this question,
Yeah.
okay? This is my question to Chris. You can answer after he answers. How does that keep us with the steps? I mean, I thought this whole phase process we're going through is so that we are adjusting the distance between the steps so that it is uniform across the board. So I don't see how it can be uniform if it's, different percentage that we're increasing the base. And it could be just me, so if you can just explain that to me, how it won't create any,
Compression
or even, it won't change the distance between the steps if all we're doing,
Sure.
is adding that and then
So,
whatever.
so right now, we're at 50,500, and
Let's
then
just say 50,000 for ease,
Sure.
so that's 2%.
Yep, 50,000, and then step 1, so step 0 is at 50,000, that's a brand new teacher. Step 1 is 50,000 plus 3%. Step
Right.
2 is step 1 plus 3%. So when you increase the base from 50,000 to 51,000, now step 1 is 51,000 plus 3%. So you keep the same differential between every step.
We're increasing this bottom one $1,000, not each step, so like
Yeah.
this percentage is still.
It's not $1,000 even, so it's 1,000 plus 1,000 plus that 3% plus 1,000 plus
Okay,
the
so
3%.
you're not, so then
Just
in
steps.
effect, is everybody getting
Yes.
$1,000? And they're all
Well-
gonna get the same percentage increase? Percentage
The whole
isn't-
line is moving up, like if we pretended this was a salary line, instead of starting here, it would start $1,000 higher, and then the curve would be the same.
Okay, so
And
the
everybody still moves
increase
up
is go-
their step.
So we will not have a difference between the space between,
Correct.
of year 1 and a year 10. They're still gonna be the same. That's amazing that we can just add that 1,000 and.
Well, because we're only adding that to the
Percentages.
base, so that the next step
Calculates
keeps
off
the
of that.
3%, it calculates off of
So the
that,
total
so we're
cost of
maintaining the
just-
differential.
The total cost of just that part is the difference, is about
I just wanna make sure that
5
that's what
million.
you guys are
But
saying,
is
yeah?
everybody, so everybody is getting $1,000 plus whatever percent we approve here. They're not gonna get a different percentage because their base is now higher.
They're getting the same percentage, but not necessarily the same amount.
Okay, so they're getting a higher percentage. Okay, that's where my disconnect is. If we're giving $1,000 to year 1 and $1,000 to year 30.
No,
That's
'cause
not what
that's-
we're doing.
So if year one
I
is
thought we're giving it to
now,
everybody.
That's
no,
a
if year
that's
one
the
is now
FY25
51,000, because we're going up from
Right.
50, and then the next one is 3%, then now it'll be year 2.
So that
will
person
be-
is actually getting more than 1,000 because they're getting the percentage on top. So it's not costing us just 1,000.
No,
No.
and then it
No,
costs
Now,
us
what
like
is the
$5 million.
actual, what is the actual cost to us above the 1,000 per employee?
And then after
It's
that-
gonna be like a $5 million total.
I'm sorry, I'm not that I don't trust y'all, but I'm looking to Chris because he's the finance guy.
Yeah, so I mean, we haven't calculated based on what $1,000 per employee would be, and then what the percentage is above that. We know what the total cost is and what the average is. And we can tell you percentage at every step, what the percentage increase they are getting. And what the dollar amount is that they're getting, and that's in,
So
We said in the-
what is the total cost?
so for which version, Ms.
Well,
Hill?
I'm
Increase
just
the
on,
base.
just the increase, I'm trying to
My eyes,
figure this
5.8
out.
million.
My eyes switching.
This is everybody's
It's
different.
Richard.
It doesn't matter, like.
Right, I know, I'm just, So it's not just a cost of $1,000 per person, that's just what I'm trying to, that's what I couldn't
Yeah.
figure out, the math didn't work for me.
Yeah.
But it's
What
actually
we're
more.
moving up is
Because
year zero,
$1,000 per
and then
person, we
everything
have
else
what,
is moving up relative to
4,000
that.
employees. So $1,000 per person would be about $4 million. But $1,000 per step is 5 million. So it costs us 20% more than $1,000 per person to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Because we're
so that-
keeping that differential
Yeah,
between them.
well,
Yeah.
okay, but I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
the real cost, bottom line, so it's about 20%.
Yeah,
In
and remember,
addition.
they're moving up a step because they've now gained another year of experience. So if they're on step 3 right now, next year they're gonna be on step 4.
Right, but they're getting more than 1,000 plus the 3% that they would have gotten if the $1,000 weren't there. They're actually getting the 3% on the $1,000, so
It would be like
really,
Correct.
in effect.
1,030.
So they're
Depending
getting-
on what step they're on, it could be 3% on, that 3% builds on each step. Not very much, cause it's only on 1,000.
But it's
So
over $1 million if it's 5 point something for the total cost, and we have roughly
It's
4,000
roughly
for
2,600 on this teacher scale.
Well, it's only licensed staff, right? Well, licensed, and then it also.
Instructional support,
Instructional
paras.
support.
Oh, okay, so this isn't for everybody.
Right.
And then just 3%
Correct.
increase.
So if a para is not instructional support, they don't get
But
it.
they
All our
are-
paras are
all our
on
paras.
instructional
Oh,
support.
okay, they're all on, no matter where they are, oh my gosh.
And so pairs are half, so they
Okay,
go
all
up like
right,
$500.
that, thank you, because now I understand, because I couldn't figure out how 1,000 equals the same no matter where it is. It's 1,000 plus 3%. So that's another
Right.
bonus
It'll be more
and a
than
1,000.
Yeah, and like
By
I
just
said,
adjusting the base,
So
it
1,000
increases
plus
our,
3%,
the increase goes up average to about 5% instead of what we're at 3% right now. Per,
This is stressing me out.
Well, it can't be the
For
same
teachers.
for a
It's only
30
stressful
year
because we
as a
don't have enough
starting.
money.
That's-
It can't be
that's-
less than that.
yeah.
I mean, it's
So-
gotta be.
I'm trying to
These-
keep the house
only the
and buy
ones
food.
above the
100%.
30.
Yeah, I
Time
mean,
to start driving
okay.
DoorDash.
Yeah.
All right,
But
thank you,
I'm
thank
just
you.
afraid that
Thank
if
you
we
for
don't
indulging me.
increase the base.
Okay,
No, this
Dr.
is
Warner,
good.
did you have
That's
any additional
No, I
response you
just-
wanted to add?
I just think if we don't increase the base, then we may find ourselves in a deeper hole where it's more money to cost. It's going to cost us more to try to just get at least even with spots here.
I'm not saying I wanna
Yeah.
do it or not do it, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to understand
Yeah,
it,
no,
because I
I
like
get
to
it.
know exactly
Well, I
what
have
the
a
cost
question.
is and what I'm
Clarifying question.
considering.
Ms. Guy?
Can I go? Oh, so increasing the base affects 100% of the people on that pay scale. Whereas doing phase 4 only affects certain individuals. Is that how? Okay, that's what my brain needed to know.
Phase
Okay.
4 is steps 16 through 20.
Okay.
And how many teachers are in that? I thought I saw two, but I think it was 17 through 30.
Because-
Yeah, I think the question was, how many additional do we get if we do 17 through 30? So there are some
Right,
on
yeah.
16 as well. I believe it was like 60 or 70 more employees.
785 teachers are budgeted at step 17 plus.
How many?
Yeah, but
We
that's,
have-
785, which is
That's-
31% of total teachers.
but that's not level 4, I'm just wondering how
Right.
many
So,
teachers are on level 4.
But everybody above, at 16 or above is impacted by it
Because they
Right.
become
because
17.
it builds.
Right,
So it's, excuse me, it's at 785 and I believe there was about 65 that were on step 16, so
So I have
800.
That's
295 employees, or 12% on steps 16 through 20. And that's on question 11.
What was the number?
295 employees, 12%. That's on question
That's a
11.
different, but
Okay.
number 7 says 785 teachers are budgeted at
Oh,
step
above.
17 plus.
Yes.
right, but that's 17 through 30, not,
Not 16.
So these are
Okay.
existing
Just
physical
phase
people in
one.
positions right now, we are not
Yes.
accounting for any, like, if someone leaves and we're hiring someone in a
No,
higher
it would be
level,
the
we're not
position.
accounting for open vacant positions that money is being held in abeyance for, like, we are talking about physical people, this is the number that goes to a person, physical body.
so like.
Correct.
So about a third of our
Yes, when we pulled, those are the number of employees we had in basically November when we pulled the data and started building the budget. Obviously, they come and go, but we typically see that they average out on a years of experience of around 12. So this year it went up a little bit more, we'll actually talk about that in the mid-year report that I'll give later. So I think we're at about 12.13 was our average years of experience. So we build in some savings into the budget, assuming that we're gonna have some vacancy savings and lapse. But actually, what we've seen the last few years is that the average salary of our teachers is going up instead of going
Well,
down
that
because
was
we're hiring more experienced
Experienced
teachers.
teachers, that's
Yeah, we
part
got
of my
that.
question, I get it, we're not gonna get an influx all of a sudden of 100, level,
Yeah.
whatever, but my concern, my concern is, I mean, this is a huge difference from what we originally put out, and so, I mean, whereas I'm looking at all of the options and I understand what we're all saying, I'm cautious about, again, I don't wanna underfight and underdeliver, but I don't wanna overpromise and underdeliver either. So there's a very significant sensitivity in this that is, I'm struggling with it a little bit, given that we're just talking about instruction. And I know we're talking about the service is already in here for a phase 2 implementation, but that's a significant number to me. And I'm just not sure, I'm not sure how to really grasp what I'm saying, to be honest with you, right? Because it is so significant, and I think that it's a lot to process in terms of, clearly I'm on board with what we need, that's not the issue, right? You know what I mean?
Full phase 4
Clearly
is
I'm
what we
on-
promised.
And to increase the base, because I just think we got to find a way to stay competitive or be competitive with everyone else. That's not up for debate, right? Like, that has to be the thing. But I'm having, I feel like if you could all talk a little bit more, so maybe you'll answer some more of my trepidation,
Yeah.
but in seeing the numbers, and then in actually hearing you talk about them, and like, it's one thing to look at them, and then it's another thing to process what we're actually talking
My
about, because the lift is huge.
quick question would be, how far is like scenario 3 plus what we have in place for support scale off of what we have in our 5-year plan? Like, is this where we hoped to be in year 4 of our 5-year plan when we approved it however many years ago?
I think in this scenario 3, we're very close, actually, I don't have the exact, because we're adding $1,000, so I know we were $500 behind, and then we didn't do 500 this year, so I think that actually gets us, probably aligns us right to where we would have been. So
Cause I
we're
think
kind of
that's the
playing-
only thing that makes me
Yeah.
less stressed about it is like,
It was
this
in our
number is
plan that's
big
published,
because we
right?
haven't really been on track.
Because
But if
we
we
made
still
the-
want to be
yeah.
on track, we
This is
need
what we
to
have to
shoot
do.
for being on track. Even if we don't get there, or if we do, like, if we do, then great, then we're in better shape for year 5. But I still believe in our 5-year plan, and I still think that's where we need to be, and if I still have that belief, like I did 3 years ago, however long it was, then this is what I need to ask for, because I still believe in our 5-year plan. Now, we haven't had anybody tell us we need to renegotiate our 5-year plan because of circumstances changed, money changed, whatever changed. We could have, I assume that somebody would tell us it's way off now, we have to really go back to the drawing board, we haven't. And without that change, then I'm still, that's the train I'm riding.
To pay for everything, we didn't make those adjustments for the base starting salary for the last 2 years. Now we're trying to say.
Well, last year we did the 500 last year,
Yeah, we did part of it, yeah, but we haven't been.
but we have to say
I don't
that.
think
We
that
haven't
we're
been increasing it the way
because
we had planned originally.
Staff understands, the community understands, it's not a promise, it's an ask.
Yeah.
And we know we're not gonna get a rubber stamp. When is the last time
So
we
I
got a rubber
guess
stamp? So
that's my
this is-
concern, because every year that we do this and then we don't get the money and we have to come back and see what we're pulling
Reconcile.
from it. And
Yeah.
then everybody accuses us of not being transparent or not being, oh, we said we were gonna do this, and then nobody recognizes the reconciliation process does happen after we don't get the money.
Yeah.
So that I think is, and I'm not afraid to ask for it in terms of whatever. I just feel like the public has been bounced around enough and has, particularly our teachers, back and forth and up and down, and we already see the writing's on the wall clearly, but that is my concern, where we are going to make this ask as the school board, knowing full well and totally we're completely reliant on across the street. We have zero say whatsoever.
That's what this is. Dr. Chase?
Yeah, so I just, two things. One was, we used to go up to step 39, and then do we have anybody up at the top who is not on this scale?
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't publish above 30, and that's what we've consolidated, so the people above 30, depending on the scenario, so, in scenario one of the superintendent's budget, that's what brings the average down a little bit, because they're getting about 1.5% increase, because we're trying to let 30 catch up to those positions, and then when we do phase 4, it's like an average of 3%, and probably similar on if we did the full phase 4 plus the base, that
The
increase
minimum that
goes up.
anyone is getting is 3% on the top of that, and I think the highest that someone is on right now is 44.
Wow. But we are.
But a lot of those, it's been consolidated a lot, so.
But so
Different
if you're step 30 this year, you will stay step 30, is that right? You'll get the 3.5% that 30
We'll give that
is-
minimum,
But you aren't going to be on a
Moving up.
step 31 or 32 or
Moving
30,
up.
right?
Right.
So we now have capped our scale
correct,
at 30
yep,
years.
you nailed it, yep,
Okay, I just wanted to make, so
So-
we have some people who are grandfathered in.
That were already
because-
above.
Who are already above, but we now are capped at 30 years.
yes ma'am.
Which is consistent with our
Co-
competition,
Right.
correct?
Yeah. It varies, some are at 25, some are at 35, it's just
Okay.
who's kind of been able to consolidate that down or.
Right, I just, it wasn't, I just wanted to know what had
Until you
happened.
retire.
Yeah, no, you
Okay.
get it, yep, perfect.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
that's
then,
one of
and
the
then my
questions
other,
that was
my
asked.
other comment was, going to be,
I couldn't excuse me, Dr. Chase is trying to give us her thoughts, which I'd like to hear.
so, you know, in response to Ms. Halstead's issue, my concern about going across the street without phase 4 and the increase to the base is that then I've already said at budget reconciliation, I'm not gonna look at that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I'm
hear
not
you.
sure that that's the case, right? I mean, if I'm gonna start cutting, I wanna look at the entire budget. I don't wanna be saying, we're not even gonna look
We
at
took
this.
this off the table already.
That's
fair.
No, I
appreciate
Yeah, yeah.
My issue with
Certainly I
that,
voiced my concerns to get them.
Yep,
I
yep.
appreciate,
No,
this is
why I was-
complicated.
the way I feel about back and forth is, this board is not back and forth. We say this is what our teachers should have. Every year, we say this is what our teachers should have. Nothing has changed as far as what we believe our teachers should have.
Right.
For our
nothing's changed
employees,
since
greater
our budget
employees, I'm
priorities.
saying teachers as a catch-all word, our employees should have. We're not saying this year they get this year we get that, because this is, you know, because of the temperature in the community, we're not changing what we believe our school community needs. We might have to adjust our response to their needs based on what we get, but what we believe they need and they deserve and that we want has not changed. So we are stable over here.
Yeah. Our budget priorities, attract and retrain high-quality teaching staff. That's our number one. Our number two is secure the resources necessary. Well, we aren't compromising our priorities. We're just saying the money they're offering isn't gonna be enough to cover it. And we've tried to narrow it as best we can, but I don't wanna concede anything until I have to.
Speaking of narrowing, the other thing I was gonna ask about that I don't see on here is the differentiated school site allocation we've been talking about for 3 years. I just would be remiss if we did not bring that up. We talk about, and including the supervisors talks all the time about putting more money into the schools, into the classrooms, into student impact. And that is an incredibly quick and meaningful way to do that. The differentiated school site funds are, funds that principals can use to help teachers fill gaps, to help students, covers what could be student out-of-pocket costs, such as field trip fees, prom fees, yearbook fees, things like that. And the reason why differentiated costs vary is right now, if every school gets the same amount per pupil, and that's one pot of money regardless, but if you are trying to fill the needs of more ESOL kids or more socioeconomic disadvantaged kids, that money goes less far. And I personally would like to see us find a way to meet those needs. so that schools have a pot of money that is differentiated for the communities that they serve, so that, you know, more of our kids can get what they need, and if a school needs more ESOL, or special ed manipulatives, or bilingual literature, whatever it is they need for that particular population that isn't needed in another school, I think this is a way that we can move forward in doing that rather than just a flat amount. I forget what that number is, it's usually
It's about
relatively
1.2
low.
million.
Low, 1.2
Wait,
million.
is that it?
It's not in here yet, but it
So-
is
so do
something
we have a
that we
sense-
talk about every year, we have to cut every year, and again, it's one of those things that I don't believe our need or our commitment to this has changed, so I would like for us to think about whether there's room for it in this year's ask.
Well, even if we could break it apart and maybe do one group and start adding one group to the budget every year, so that we're saying, okay, we're trying to make
Instead of the
headway in
large
some of
ask,
these
break it
things.
into bite pieces.
So focus on the greatest need. Is it economically disadvantaged students? Is it SPED students? Is it ESOL students? Is it something else? Focus on the greatest need and start adding.
I don't think that's a bad idea, but I think when you do the ask, you put it all in there. The public doesn't know what we need if we don't say it. And how we say it is in our budget.
Right.
And we have to be transparent. And they don't always pay attention, all of the public, and they don't always watch all the meetings. But they can pick up a social media post and see what our budget is. And it'll make sense to some people or whatever, but if, we have to ask what we need. And if we ask half of what we need, then we can't even complain that we don't get what we need, because we didn't ask for it.
What is the cost for the
I think you said 1.2.
1.2.
1.2 million?
And you're right, it can be adjusted, you know, that was calculated a couple of years ago with fixed dollar amounts based on, you know, number of free and reduced or economically disadvantaged students, number of special needs students, EL students. So we could phase that in, instead of maybe saying, oh, we're only gonna do the EL piece this year. We could adjust and say, hey, instead of $25 per student in each one of those categories, we're gonna do 10 and then 10 and 5 or.
I mean, I think the intent of that economically disadvantaged is probably the largest, is what the intent is, right?
Mhm.
And it wouldn't surprise me if some folks straddle multiple
Categories.
categories.
Yeah.
And so I think your biggest and most effective would be that first group, but
I agree.
Of course, we do have Title I funds going primarily to the schools
We
that have
hope.
the higher populations
Yeah.
there.
But that's
So the-
only at elementary, correct?
It's in
Yes.
elementary, but
Yes.
that's a significant number of students, and the schools have discretion on
well, so then maybe we
some
start with
discretion,
high
right,
school
on
and
how
middle
they
school.
can use that. So
Sure,
if we're
that's
gonna
a
have
good idea,
limited
too.
funding, I would look at where we don't give anything.
Right, so if we
At all.
look at middle and high school then.
I'm hearing a lot from some constituents in the community, particularly at the high school now that prom is on the table, that there are students that can't afford their class dues and their prom fees, and the principal only has so much, and then they have to spread it over a larger number of economically disadvantaged students, and it's just not getting them far enough. And, you know, I know Ms. Halsted talks all the time about, we only have these kids a short amount of time, and, you know, they've worked hard to get where they are, and because they can't write a check, they can't go to prom, or they can't,
Well, it's all
whatever.
the end of the year stuff that they have
It's a
to do.
lot all at
Yeah.
once.
And graduation, I was surprised, cause I had a friend just in tears, cause she couldn't afford her son's cap and gown and ring and announcements and all the other things that go with it, because it was just too much money.
Mhm.
Very few students do
It's
rings
getting
anymore.
worse.
Well, we're not offsetting that by, I mean, fundraising, particularly across the board, isn't exactly the most, you know, robust way to intake money anymore, clearly. You used to have that little suitcase that you come to my school with, and you could just go door to door, and then people could just buy the items. That was very effective.
Selling wrapping paper.
Yes, that was the best.
Remember the
Popcorn,
world's
there was
best,
still popcorn, Thomas. Get your DDA cabinet.
probably can't do that anymore, too many calories.
Ms. Healy,
No,
your
go.
question earlier about the percentage increase for each one, so scenario one.
At the bottom here?
No, I'm sorry, you asked what the percentage
Oh,
increase
yes.
was to
Oh,
the
yeah.
county
Yeah.
transfer?
Uh-huh.
And so in scenario one, it's 6.3 or 6.4% rounded. In scenario 2, it's 10.5%, and then in the last scenario, it's 13.4%.
Right, and that sounds
13
like
point what?
it's,
4.
and what was the percentage increase last year from the year before? It was pretty high, wasn't it?
5.
It was
Yeah,
like
I
nine,
think it was-
it was nine
Yep.
something.
Yeah. It was 8.28, so yeah.
I know percentages are helpful, but I also find them a little misleading because we're already
3%.
below where we should have been.
Something else.
So, you know, a percentage of a number that's lower than it should have been sounds bigger than it really is.
I'm just looking at the numbers.
No, I know you are, but
Giving them weight.
Yeah.
To me, there's some sense of reality, you know, in numbers.
Right, I mean, what we're looking at here, we have to consider increase in student population and inflation, right?
Yeah.
Those are two things that are driving our increases right now, is that we get more students and we've had quite a lot of inflation.
And the
so-
legislative changes. I
Right.
think that is significant
Huge.
this year
Yeah,
Especially with ESOL.
with the ESOL.
yes,
Yeah.
right, absolutely, changes in what we're asked to do.
We
Required.
have about
Required
45
to
positions.
do without,
45 positions that we have to add just because of meeting SOQs, which I've said this before, a lot of times we've been in a position, we've been above SOQs in almost every
Right.
category, we've never really been at the bare minimum. And this is a case where the SOQs have caught up to us and actually passed us where we have to
Of
keep
course,
up.
we did have notice because we had 2 years to
Yes.
catch up, so it's not like they just sprung it on us.
Yeah.
But that ought to be something we need to make clear when we do have our discussions with the supervisors. This is all, you know, not just things we want to do. These are things we're required to do.
Required.
And the price tag for that.
So
and how that
but also,
fits
again,
in the
not to
whole.
be, I'm not trying to be whatever, but realistically, as we look at the budget moving forward, like, I get that we have to have those, but, I mean, there's no guarantee we'll find people to fill those positions realistically, and then we're holding money back that should be going somewhere else, right? Because we have to keep those positions vacant, knowing there's a strong possibility we can't, not because we're not trying, but we can't
or they're
fill them.
underfilled, like if they're filled with a
Right.
sub rather than a.
So we're holding
licensed
money
teacher.
that, because I get it, the state's saying we have to do this and all these other things, but if it's not feasible, given our current economic forecast, it just doesn't make sense to me to hold that money off on a number that's so incredibly high.
Yeah, it's frustrating to
But
try to solve a problem.
we were told when we asked this question before that we should be able to fill those positions.
I-
That's what we were told, is that, or am I remembering
I just know
that
we still
correctly?
have how many
We
open
asked that.
positions from across, and I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just saying, we've had to take positions off the table a bunch as well, because we already know they're hard to staff positions or whatever, and I'm not sure how easy it is, I know we talked about
Like
this a little bit, but
psychologists and things like
it
that.
still has to be out there that
Sad,
it's an unrealistic expectation, I believe, so
What's the
while
law?
we're in what we're in, that money could be utilized for the allocations and like the site differentials that we've been talking about here.
Or some of the staffing standards that we keep putting off
Correct.
that would be helpful
Mhm.
for teachers to do better at the jobs that they're being required to do.
To do, right? Yeah, I mean, to me, so we're looking at this as the totality of the number, but there's a bulleted list that goes underneath every single solitary one of these, which makes it a little bit more elaborate or sometimes more simple, right? Because when you're looking at it, there's a justification process there, but to look at the total number of people, I think it's great, you want us to hire all those people, then
45.
hire them for us, send them to us with your signature on their paycheck. But do you know what I'm saying? Because it is frustrating to know that we have to sit on positions that we can't fill when we could definitely use that money elsewhere. So,
will we get updated numbers March 30th or shortly after March 30th?
Updated numbers on
Student enrollment.
student enrollment.
We can provide that, you know, we update as far as overall student enrollment, but March 31 is the
March
big,
31,
yeah, it's
Yeah.
when we report to the state.
right.
So it's not exactly on March 31, because there's a little bit of cleaning up that data and making sure it's accurate before we provide it to the state, but.
Right. I mean, just, you know, I had read in something that we have some students who maybe are not coming to school these days because they're concerned about things.
Sure.
And so if those numbers are down, we need to be aware of that, right?
Yep. Yeah, right now, our EL projections for next year are based on our trends and what we've added each year. And so we were behind this year, we grew more than we thought, and so now as we go into next year, we didn't really just take a single year, but looking at this past year was still less than some of the previous years, so we factored in that when we projected for next year, and that's what these SOQ required positions are. But 100%, if we don't need all those positions, then we won't add them, we'll kind of have them in the bank, and as the students come, because we have historically always seen growth throughout the year in that student population. So September 30th and then March 31, we usually have a lot more students at March 31 than we do at September 30th.
Right, but I don't wanna be holding a whole bunch of positions in the bank that end up going unfilled, and then I wasn't able to use that money for something else that was needed.
Yeah.
So I'd like to have it be really close to the right number.
100%.
Well, hypothetically, if it lapses and we have at the end of the year, we apply it to one-time expenditures and,
But
we do use it.
if we look at
Not-
this,
not
right?
maybe
I
for
know.
where we would have chosen to use it if we had had access to it earlier, but we do
And-
use it.
I'm sorry, if you can reiterate for me, Dr. Smith, because I think this is a conversation we have, the staffing for growth and actually staffing for the new schools are different.
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, if you're looking at this, impact of enrollment on the existing staffing standards, 111 FTEs, that's a good chunk of change. And if every one of those positions needs to be filled or is filled or can't, like, there is so many variables rolled up into that. But that's a $7 million hit or $7.5 million hit, right? So that's part of what I'm talking about when you go through this line by line and looking at each of the things, like staffing for growth doesn't even account for the staff that we have to hire to fill the positions in the new schools. And I really feel like people will be confused about that. But if anywhere in this 111 is the availability to hire people for the new schools, then do you know what I'm saying? There's a weighted factor there to
I
say,
think some
okay.
of them are, because like the
Yeah.
classroom teachers are, but like the principals, the librarians, the nurse, like those
Use a
aren't part of the
teacher.
111.
Librarian.
Because classroom teachers will
Counselors.
follow the students, right?
Yes.
Because the
Largely.
teachers that are in trailers will move to a classroom,
Well,
right?
right, but this is still, we're still projecting
Yes.
the need for 111.
Right, but
I love the
36
point
of
four, by
those.
the way, I wanna meet that
What
person,
number,
FTE.
what number are you
That's the
on?
print.
So under non-discretionary expenses,
She's in
the
these-
first one,
these-
staffing for
Oh,
growth,
you're on
school-based
the- you're on the
positions,
second
this is $7.5 million, the impact of enrollment.
Right, and
Now,
that's-
I get that that's the impact of all the new houses, clearly. and
Well, no,
that-
but I mean, the biggest part of that number is teachers for ESOL, 36.5, and
Mhm.
that's why I wanna be sure that that number is right.
Well, and additional is
I
the
probably
number
know this
of
very well.
paraprofessional level twos.
Right.
That's a hefty number
This
as
is
well.
growth,
Yeah.
okay. Wait, well, I'm sorry, the paraprofessional, right?
Level twos.
Is that for level two, is it level two for special education or special ed paras?
And we have, I'm assuming, a graph that, not maybe particularly for this, that shows where we're at with our special needs kids, which level they're at, and then how that ties in to what staffing needs they have, or we have for them. So people can easily see, this is how many more kids we've added to our enrollment, this is the needs they have, these are the things we need to provide for them.
At the high school.
Yeah, and so similar, this is our English language learners, but that was our 36.5 growth, so we went over this at the last meeting, but this shows the levels based on their scoring of their English proficiency and what the SOQ is, and so how many students and what we're projecting. And Dr. Chase, you're right, we could see a decrease there. I can tell you, a month ago, we weren't seeing any major drops, we'd still grown since the beginning of the year. But we'll continue to monitor that for the rest of this year. It's even over the next month or 6 weeks as we try to finalize this budget, we'll see if we see any adjustments.
And so to clarify, my concern isn't the 36.5, it's if I can only hire 20 of those people, then there are 16.5 salaries being held in abeyance when
Yeah.
I've got so many other needs across the board.
And right now, of our 113.5 FTEs, I think all of them except one are filled. Now, does that mean that we're gonna have that same, percentage of filled for next year? No, maybe not, because we're adding a lot, all at once. But that's, a little bit of that is factored in because we do hold back and we assume that we're gonna have some vacancy savings overall on the budget.
But the other part of the problem though is that when we talk about increasing our ESOL, so many of those come out of our classrooms. And so where we end up filling in this large number of ESOL with our classroom teachers, now we're in a problem with classrooms. So I mean, it's not, we don't always hire from without for ESOL, we frequently do that within. And then that becomes a problem for whatever subject,
Correct.
whatever
Yeah.
grade level.
So just out of curiosity, we have about $300,000 left in salary lapse. Could we utilize some of those funds to maybe fill economically disadvantaged site-based funding for high school and middle school? And then start using some of those funds
I was gonna ask that too, is
for
if
next,
it
so
can
like for
be-
next
You're
year,
talking about this year.
next year.
Well, the only time it's a lapse is this year. We don't have any lapse next year
No, but
until we
if we
have
took
vacant
that
positions.
300,000 and said, okay, we're giving you a one-time fund for next year for your.
can't
But
do
they
it
have
for
to
next
spend
year.
it
You have to
before
spend it.
July
Has to be
1st.
spent.
What you
Has to
could
be
do-
encumbered by,
Right. What you could
The
do
end of
is
the year,
look
fiscal year.
in December and say, hey, it looks like there's going to be whatever, so we will give economically disadvantaged schools
Okay.
this money to use for end of the year expenditures.
Okay.
So you-
well, and I'd like to have a discussion when we get to that point.
Right.
Is it economically
Right, right.
disadvantaged schools or is it to economically disadvantaged students?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I can see arguments on both sides,
Sure.
but I think it's something that we need to look at and talk about.
I was just gonna ask
Like
how
a
we're
rate
gonna
based
decide.
on the student designation,
But we would
so-
at least have a plan
I
for
just-
salary
I'm
lapse.
just-
No,
using
but
word,
I
right.
think there's some value because some schools, as we know,
Yes.
are, you know,
More
the
percentage.
families are much, you know, in a better position to raise funds that can be used to help out all the students. So I'd wanna have that, you know, discussion and probably even touch base with our PTO, PTSAs. If we are in that fortunate position of having funding that we can allocate.
This might be a Mr. White question, and I understand he's not here, and if you don't have the answer. The trend in Stafford County, when we talk about having student growth, are we seeing that proportional across all grade levels, or is it, oh, we're getting really at the higher grades? Cause I didn't know if maybe
We have
new
more
houses, we're having people move here who are like just building their families, and therefore we're seeing more growth in the elementary level, right? Like with new construction.
Yeah, his
Or-
projections are gonna look at a 3-year, multi-year average at every grade level, but where we see our biggest jump is actually 8th and 9th grade. We see our cohort progression is the highest, and that's where it could be attracting more from private schools or home schools when it gets to that level
That
where
makes sense.
Or
a lot of the private
military
schools stop at
families
8th
that
grade.
move
And they
and-
wanna start in
and
high school.
they're like, this is where I'm retiring
Yeah.
and my kids are gonna get through high school.
Yeah, that's accurate too.
Right.
But
As
also
opposed
with
to-
the price of homes, you're not usually seeing new families be able to afford to move into
Right.
the homes. The price of homes that are going on now that we're seeing, those are usually established families where they're in their, you know, very late 30s, earlier 40s, and they can afford these homes, so they have 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, you know, 15-year-olds. Young
We
people.
also see
Former realtor.
families staying in single-family homes
Right.
too.
Yeah.
and so forth.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I mean, my parents came here and we did not have a lot of money, and like my sister had help with all that. Like they're working their tail ends off, and if I were to.
No, I understand, but that's the trend, I'm talking about
Right.
the trend of what we're normally seeing. Cause I'm
Right.
trying to sell my house. So I've been looking at the trends.
Which is interesting, because years ago, when we had, you know, new housing going in that was affordable, a lot of families were moving to Stafford with young children. And if you look over the years, I mean, I'm talking a lot of years ago, they were moving in with the young kids and the elementaries felt the push. But then, you know, over the years, when the price of housing increased, the families had, you know, older children and was coming in at different levels. So-
We're also seeing, one of the things that Mr. White always looks at is what's our kindergarten enrollment this year compared to births in Stafford
Right.
County 5 years ago? And kindergarten enrollment is always higher than that birth ratio, so there's a progression even there.
Well, next year starts our COVID baby year. Babies born
Uh-oh.
the
Uh-oh.
year we shut down, so then the year after that would have been, you know, That's
gonna be a
crazy,
lot of
right?
people.
They-
I like
Because
that.
Blaze starts kindergarten and he was born in December of 19, so kids that were born as things shut down are coming to kindergarten next year.
And then there's sort of a slump in birth rate for that next year. A lot of people are like, I don't wanna have kids.
I'm gonna ask another budget question,
Balance
I don't,
why?
again, don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know that there's a lot of worry amongst my constituents about the loss of federal funding, and how we might make that up in our budget if that were to come to pass. I don't anticipate that this, like, I have not seen anything that puts us at risk. However, we have to ask. I don't know if you've heard anything in the budgeting school money world on, you know, how likely it is to lose money and what would happen with this budget if,
Who's got the crystal ball?
right, but like,
I was looking at Head Start. Head Start traditionally has been almost 100% funded by the federal government. We got $3 million in there. If we were to lose that, for whatever reason, that would be a huge cost.
So school nutrition
to Stafford
program.
County. Yes, which is self-supporting.
By the federal government.
12.2 million if the federal food program, nutrition program goes. It's 14.5 million if Head Start goes, and then what do we do? Close both the Head Starts. DPI may pick up some of the slack, but unlikely.
But then what does that do? The problem is the ripple effect, when the kids that are not in Head Start hit kindergarten, it makes it 100 times harder to try to get them
Play
up
catch
to,
up.
Yeah.
you know, the level of all
Yeah.
the kids that have been in the
Head Start
private preschools.
what insight can you add to the, how can you make us feel better, Mr. Fulmer?
Yeah, I don't know if I can help you feel better. I can say it's definitely something that's being discussed, you know, across the state and probably nation, but internally, we're at least discussing it as far as, all right, like, what could happen, what would our contingency plans be? So there's discussions going on, there's no formal plan yet, because how do you plan for a loss of $25 million?
29 million, isn't that
Yeah.
what you told us?
Yeah, if you include all your school nutrition and
What about,
everything,
what
it's,
about Medicaid? I mean, that,
That's
we
part of
do
it
get,
too.
That's
we get
2.6 million.
significant
Right, it's in there, I
funding.
asked
Yeah,
for
we
it.
get the funding from Medicaid. What if we were to lose that?
yeah.
Where would we make it up? I mean, where does that put us?
And that's the thing, is
Knowing
like,
this budget,
is
counting all this
there-
money.
We're
I
counting
mean,
on sweet
assuming
money
that
too, though. We're
if
assuming
the
we're
federal
running our
government
revenues
withdraws
all the
funds,
time.
they're also gonna withdraw
All
the
the time.
requirement that we're providing the things that are,
It's question
so
41.
how much,
41.
like, what would we have to, what would be fees, what would be essentially be forced into stop doing versus continue to do and find money for? Cause some of it will be like speech services that are currently covered maybe by Medicaid or by special education dollars, and you know, there's just, it's so pervasive on where and how we use these funds. But I'm glad to hear that we're at least starting the talk of contingency plans. We
See,
need
the
lots
approach
of
we're taking right now, you know, it's not like we're gonna, you know, cut 30 million from the budget with the assumption of how are we gonna make that up?
Right.
So we wanna move forward as if there's not gonna be significant changes, but let's kind of plan for the worst, at least to have that in our back pocket. Some of the, there's not gonna be easy answers for all of it, obviously, it's gonna be some tough decisions to make if that comes to fruition.
So we're on it.
I have another question. If that were to come to fruition, do we have to vote on the cuts that we would make or the changes that we would be forced to make?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's our job.
Okay, I hope it's next week.
Because if we don't do that, then we might go to jail because we will have overspent our budget.
Okay, I don't wanna go to jail.
Well, it's not just going to jail, it's how do we pay people if
Yeah.
we ever were to overspend? That's
Right.
the significant issue. That's when you have to talk about, dare I say, RIFs.
So
On
with
that,
that, I just wanted to say, Missy let me know that there is dinner here. If we wanna take like a 5-minute recess, bring our stuff in here, and then we can,
Who has an appetite?
Finish talking about depressing stuff while
Yes.
we eat? Great.
yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
okay, I didn't-
I'm gonna let my granddaughter play her trumpet for me because she wanted to do that.
Aw.
That's so cute.
Okay.
We have other questions that have arisen, do we have other commentary, thoughts on this budget? I know we're all eating now, so
I know, I'd like to
Be patient.
just add one thing. I've been visiting some schools and what I'm hearing, you know, cause you wanna know, hey, what didn't come through for some of you with your budget? And no complaining, absolutely no complaining, just, hey, wanted you to know. And one of them that I'm hearing over and over is when we put forth the dean of students last year for middle and high school, but ended up only doing it for high school, it was hoped that that would show up again this year for them. And I see Chris's answer to a question that said, if we did it for the over 900 students, it would take care of 6 of our middle schools. And so, and asking, what would this look like in the middle schools? Obviously similar in the high schools, but one of the things that the high school has a lot more room, flexibility, and options when it comes to discipline, and the middle school does not, is what I'm understanding. And so it would be, I'd like for it to be a thought of, I think it's like over 700,000 is the number Chris gave us to take care of the 6 middle schools. I would like for it to be a thought, as it is one of our staffing standard goals, but it was also something we put in and took out. In the discipline situation, you know, it might be able to help cut with out-of-school suspension because it'll be another person to help take care of discipline during the day, is what I've heard. I just ask that we can maybe, I mean, like I said, there's a laundry list of staffing things, but this is one that we put in, took out, and I'd like to consider. Obviously, I know what I'm asking for and whatnot, but I just like it to be
You're talking
considered.
about for this year.
Yes,
So that would be similar cost as converting to paying twice a month or to giving people paid family leave, right? And those are things that we are not considering. So, I mean, just.
but those
Like-
are things that, when we're talking about taking care of students, paying twice a month is not that.
But we say that it would increase, it would improve
Attraction, sure,
attraction.
I don't disagree with that, it could,
Mhm.
I mean, we say it, but we say also could.
Right.
This is a direct impact to and for students and staff.
So, in terms of discipline, is having a licensed teacher pulled out of the classroom to be a dean of students to help out with discipline better than putting a para in there to take care of discipline?
Yes, because there is some, from what I understand, there is some, information, sensitive information or whatever that I've been told, like, even the dean of students would have to have training on how to deal with. But the other part of it is maybe, like right now, we pull a classroom teacher, not a para, a classroom teacher to be no longer a classroom teacher to handle 504s.
Is that correct, Dr. Smith?
I'd have to ask Dr. Bush. I know that at the high school, we have put in diagnosticians have helped to
In the middle school
support
too.
that. Okay, I know she had, one of her requests was for additional diagnosticians to help with 504s at the middle school level, and if there was, it would cover the remaining schools.
Right.
But we don't have them in all of our middle schools.
Right.
And I thought she had shared with me at one point that it's spread out, like, so the principal has to determine who's gonna be that 504 coordinator.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's an assistant principal, sometimes it is a teacher, sometimes it's a special education person. It varies school to school is what I had heard, but I don't know that I have the specifics. I
Yeah.
will say, I think on the dean piece, it does help I mean, it definitely would help in terms of administrators having that instructional leadership, to be able to be in the classrooms, get into classrooms more often. I hear the same in terms of discipline, can be challenging, and it's also helpful for a dean to have that training, to have that consistent person around discipline. But Dr. Bush just joined us around the question for assignment of 504, maybe you heard the question.
I heard part of it, if you could just repeat it for me, so I
Dr.
make sure I
Chase,
got it
maybe?
right.
Well, my question was just in terms of discipline, like, what is the best plan for having somebody pulling kids out for discipline?
I think the question was also around 504.
Yeah.
I think Ms. Randall asked
Yeah, who does
the
504?
504 question about who
I
is
know
doing
in some of the
504.
middle schools, it's actually a designated teacher. In other middle schools, because they do have that, autonomy to choose, they've used 2 of their assistant principals to handle the 504s, but that cuts in their ability to be, like you were saying, an instructional leader, doing observations and those kinds of things. So by providing a dean of students, it allows them to handle a little bit, they can't do all the discipline, but they can handle that and free up a little more time for the assistant principals. In some schools where there are 504 coordinators, instructional leaders, and discipline, it just takes one thing off their plate, potentially.
So at the high school level, we do have a 504 coordinator. That is a shared responsibility of the diagnostician. That's part of their job at the high school level, is not only to do assessing of students for disabilities, but also to be the coordinator for 504 at the high school level.
So do the dean of students at the high school do that?
No, that is something that the diagnostician does. That is their
So
job
the
to
high school has a
coordinate.
dean of students and has a 504 coordinator?
Through a diagnostic.
Through the
Through a
they're a diagnostician who also carries that
Okay, and
job
what about at the middle
responsibility.
school?
At the middle school and at the elementary school, basically it is whoever is assigned in that building. So part of the staffing standards was to increase the number of diagnosticians. We are about 3.5 diagnosticians short from having every middle school have a full-time diagnostician, and then we would be able to phase in that model of those full-time diagnosticians at the middle school would then also take on the 504 coordination.
Which would put the classroom teacher back in the classroom, if that's what that middle school is using.
So they would still, so there's a difference between a 504 coordinator and then a case manager. Each of the schools and how they case manage and manage the number of students that have 504s in their building is different. So they might have it spread a whole bunch of students among one person, or they might spread it out to where each teacher has just one student that they're responsible for case managing. So yeah, to answer your question in a long-winded way, yes,
Well,
that is
see,
exactly
I don't remember
what would
when
happen.
our staffing standards decided to have a diagnostician at every school, because I do remember when Dr. Taylor decided we only need half a diagnostician at a school. So, I remember when he made that cut, and I was kind of surprised by that cut, and he said, well, we'll get 12 school psychologists, and I was like, how are you gonna get 12 school psychologists? The reason we have diagnosticians is you can't hire school psychologists. But that's what we did. So when did we decide that we wanted to go back to a diagnostician at every school? Because I don't remember that conversation.
We'd have to look back in the staffing standards,
Mayor
spreadsheet.
Patrick?
I don't think we ever,
I-
did we ever go away from it in the staffing standards, or do we always have one
There he
diag
is.
at the?
It is in the staffing standards, right?
The staffing standard is,
For diagnostician.
is a half FTE in elementaries and middle schools and one per high school. So
So if we switch to one full for high school, we could cover the 504
There-
this year.
There
there's
is one.
right,
And
so,
that's sorry,
sorry, I
middle
should,
school,
so I should clarify that right now, there is a full-time diagnostician in each high school, but as Dr. Bush said, they have split duties. They're doing both the diagnostician work and serving as the 504 coordinator. There is a separate standard for 504 coordinators that's based on the number of 504s in the school. So pick your path for how you would want to.
And this is above and beyond the special ed department chair,
Correct.
which every school has.
Correct, at all grade levels.
So I will say
But
that.
that's also different than a dean of students and what
It
we're
is.
utilizing them for.
Right, and these are
That's
two
right.
separate
Exactly.
conversations.
But one's
but-
3.5 people and one's
Six.
6 people. And how much would 3.5 diagnosticians cost us at the middle school level?
Approximately.
10-month teacher,
10-month teacher, probably the same.
as every.
But they're also
And
solving
85,000
different problems,
per
I mean,
teacher.
they're
They
teaching
they are
other-
solving different problems, but if we can't do A, maybe we can do B.
Well, I have to,
and-
I have to say, I find having this conversation at this point, I feel like it's a deeper dive. I feel like Dr. Smith needs to, like, and we need to, like, look at these staffing standards that change and don't change and, you know, like,
Maybe we need, FAB needs to conduct a review of the staffing standards sometime, like
I
in,
think the whole board
I
needs
think the
to
whole
be-
board, I don't think
Yeah.
that's a fab.
Yep.
yeah, and maybe that's a work session item. And then really have, because we're trying to skim stuff around the edges, and I think our budget should focus on the big items and where we are and see where we are at.
But it is
Just a-
also, it is also a request though,
Yeah.
from the schools based on the discipline and the trends and the violations against the code of conduct that they're seeing. So that is part of the discussion that has to be had, I think. And I'm not disagreeing with you about it being a fourth quarter conversation,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not disagreeing with that either. What I'm saying is that the conversation that has to center around, you know, where we're at needs-based wise
So it's about
moving forward.
250,000, right, give or take.
Well, I'd like to expand that to look at middle schools generally, because we have tended to, you know, give to the high schools lately, we get into the elementary, and middle schools may not have been given the same
Yes.
focus. So I'd like to follow up on that request. I don't see that we're going to be able to fund it this year unless we get a windfall. But it's something I'd like to look at, and it may be something, if funds free up during the year, we don't have to wait a whole year to do it. And we can also look at where, you know, what of the middle schools has the greatest need. Because it may not just be based on the number of students, it may be based on incidents, if it's disciplines.
Or their
and
community.
whatever.
FY '26 is the 5th year of a 5-year plan, so we should actually be thinking about our next 5-year plan, and I think this is a place to look, I mean, certainly a place to look at it.
Well, I think it's a good point to evaluate the staffing standards to see where we are
Yeah,
and where we need to go, and if what we've done has been, are we getting what we expected from what we've done? Or are we
where we
not?
need to pivot.
Where do we need to pivot? And I think that's a Dr. Smith issue.
and
we
the
need-
discussion with middle school principals, all the middle school
Yes.
principals
Right.
about what is the most effective way to handle this issue.
Right.
And what
Which
did
would
what
also
did they
come from
see as their
discussing
greatest
with our
need?
high
Right.
school principals, how it's like what they're learning, because they're in the process of learning
Right.
as they go as well. Like how to best utilize that position, what it evolves into being and whatnot, so it would be helpful to hear from them, right, how that might play out in the middle school.
Yeah.
I get there's a differential in the population, but still, certainly we should use their knowledge to guide a conversation we have about it.
Right, and then they may have other needs that, you know, haven't been explored, because traditionally, I think our staff is, you know, trying to help make things happen and make it go forward and not, you know, necessarily bringing out, you know, what would, you know, best benefit them in their situation. So, it just seems like we tend to not do as much for the middle school. Now, granted, there are only 3 years of middle school, so hypothetically, that could be, you know, one
This is
of
the
the reasons,
conversation I had with
but
my
I'd
sister,
like
middle
to
school's like
look
the middle
into that.
child, nobody cares.
Middle child is the best child though, honestly.
I've got 2 in middle school right now,
That's
I
why
care.
they get the least amount of attention, because they are the best.
You have 2 middle schoolers? Oh my goodness.
I have a 6th grader and an 8th grader.
I do think this is something worth taking a look at, and I think I've heard from principals that they would love to have some input into it, so I'd love to talk with principals about our staffing standards as they are now, get some feedback, bring it back to you so we can have this larger discussion. I know they had some questions for me as I've met individually in small groups with them about staffing standards and what it does and what really meets their needs versus what may not, and kind of what those priorities might be there too. But I've heard the middle school deans on my visits as well as that's a need, so.
And I would like to just not look at the number of students in the schools, because I think it's a much broader picture than that. You know, based on, we should be looking at the population and the needs.
Because over 900, I mean, you said that is, how many
It
of our
has to
middle
be
schools?
Drew and who else?
AG Wright.
AG Wright.
didn't realize AG Wright was that small.
Well,
Well,
it's
it's
because
at about
it-
860,
Well,
so
the thing
that's-
with
Probably
AG
Dixon,
Wright
because they
is
never
there's
had
not as much room.
Right.
You know, it's one of the older schools. Is it, other,
Which
next to Drew, is AG Wright the next oldest?
I believe so.
AG Wright, Garrisonville.
You're right, they
Stafford
were from the
Middle.
eighties, I think.
Oh, Stafford Middle came, the new
2000.
Stafford, this was Stafford Middle,
Yeah.
the new Stafford Middle is.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
That's the
but
new
in
Stafford.
terms
Yeah.
of, I don't wanna speak for AG Wright, but I don't, you know, hear a lot of, you know, issues there. But I just don't want to just say we're only gonna look at it over a certain number, you know, if we don't have enough to spread it out.
But I agree with Dr. Chase, and I think this is a broader discussion about what we've done with the staffing standards, where we are, and what's working, what principals and schools have to say. Because, you know, they may say, you know, this was great as far as staffing standards went, but it's not really helping us. What we really need is this. And so instead of doing well, we're gonna add this, let's wait until we get some data from the people involved, instead of
And I
doing.
do feel like we've had 5 years to kind of implement what we can, and that, you know, it kind of clears away some of the, you know, the debris, just the,
I think
the stuff.
year 4.
Yeah, right, so next year will be
Next
year
year's year
5,
five.
fiscal year, I mean, we're talking about our year 5.
Yes.
The fifth budget of our 5-year plan is FY '26.
If I can, I don't believe those
No,
figures
exactly.
are right, Ms. Sigmund. This coming year would be the third year
Yeah, I was
of
gonna
staffing
say.
standards, but the board adopted the staffing standards in December of 2022.
Right, when Dr.
So
Taylor was
FY
first.
'24 was the first year we implemented them, in part,
Tried
of
to.
course, tried to,
Yeah.
implemented them in part. Then this year is year 2, next year is year
Year
3.
three.
So, just
Okay.
one small note.
Okay.
Because you have not been on the board for.
This is year 4, so yeah,
Right.
yeah, that makes sense.
You're just aging in school board years.
It's like dog years.
It's like dog years.
That's fast, right?
I was about to say it, but I wanted to finish doing 1 year of school board is like 7 years of living.
Dog years.
Sorry. Sorry, I'm actually 22. Just saying.
Explain that, child?
Yeah.
Or student reps have any thoughts on budget? I mean, they're living they're
living
living
the
with the
dream.
decisions. I almost said that, but they're living with the decisions that we're implementing. And,
Not fine,
and if not, that's fine.
Either
I
way.
mean, this is,
just curious.
Budget is a whole other language.
It's a lot for us too.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot for us too.
But
Right, that's scenario 3, we're hitting $500,000.
I'm like,
Yeah.
$500,000 they could do, are you kidding me?
Yeah, $500 million.
Well, try and argue $500,000. That's scary.
So I do want, just
You know what's
because
scary? Is
I don't want you to
Musk
see
and
it for the
Jeff
first
Bezos
time,
Fund that, not
and the
even
board
that
chair, please
high.
take one and pass it down.
Yep.
This is the resolution. Now, the operating fund amount on here is wrong, because I assume we're gonna make a change to it. I know we haven't talked about it. I just need, if you can take one and pass it down, please. So this is still at the 490 million for the total operating fund budget. And so we do need some direction. If we're gonna change it, we get it updated and attached to the,
Yes.
to the school board meeting agenda for the action item tonight.
So who supports option 1?
I think we have to talk, I mean, I'm interested in hearing the public hearing and what feedback we'll get. Like, I'm not,
Well, we
I
have
mean,
to
I
have a
support-
resolution
I
for the
would
meeting,
for
right?
scenario
No.
3, I would bet.
We got it,
Close, we have to have it pretty.
yeah.
you can make a motion. We can attach this one as is, and you can make your motion amending the,
The total.
Oh,
total operating budget.
Should
How
we write
much-
down the 3 numbers so that next motion can say the right number?
How much of the budget are we going to,
so this
I guess,
would be
present
502.
during the 7 o'clock meeting in advance or after the public hearing? Or are they just going to speak on what we're talking about now and what they've researched in advance of showing up tonight? We don't really have a
It would be-
presentation. Okay.
497, 659.
Wait, what's your question? We're not doing another presentation out there.
Not on
On
budget, I
this,
wanted
yeah.
to make sure.
Oh, all right, I'm like,
Give the
no
mid-year-
offense, but I
the
can't
mid-year
do it again.
report.
I'm sorry.
Grant funding
It was great
was
the first time,
changed.
it really was. highly recommend, 5 stars.
Services, so none of this, so really we're
Something
just
you just do
asking
one
for
time,
total.
that's it.
No,
That's
The
it.
So this is
replay's
option
never.
Yeah, it's never as good, no. No, couldn't repeat that if we tried.
three, and this is option.
Thank you for the voice of all of us.
What is it? Sometimes you gotta move it along, I'm just saying.
So if we,
Are we adjourning
I was gonna say, we're gonna have a 30-minute, we're gonna adjourn for 30 minutes, and then we will reconvene at 7?
I'm not sure what to do with that information.
So what are you supposed to do for 30 minutes?
Like, we usually have 30 seconds,
yourself.
so I don't know what to do with 30 minutes.
I'll go eat my dinner.
Yeah, go eat your dinner.
I'll learn how to Instagram.
We're gonna have them stop recording.
Are we gonna what? So why do I have this?
They have updates.
Oh, we have 30 minutes to go.
Why do I have this?
This is the draft resolution.
We're done.
Well, I'm jumping.
If you please rise. Thank you this evening to Brookpoint High School's Navy JROTC. Members of tonight's color guard are Ayana Arbon, Isosa Odiasi, Katara Castro, and Adesha Proudy. The instructors of Brookpoint High School's JROTC program are Master Sergeant Selwyn Reed and First Sergeant Jason Polanco. Thank you. Ms. Hall, if you could take the roll.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Chase,
Here.
Miss Eason, Miss Guy,
Here.
Miss Halsted,
Here.
Miss Healy,
Here.
Miss Irish, Miss Randall,
Here.
Miss Sigmund,
Here.
and Dr. Warner.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We have no electronic authorizations tonight. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor, please cast your votes.
Uh-oh, I don't think that went through.
That motion passes unanimously.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Is there any discussion on consent agenda items? Please cast your votes.
Uh-oh. Mine's flatlining. I'm just saying.
Okay.
That motion also passes unanimously. Are there any announcements for administrative personnel this evening, Dr. Smith?
We have no administrative personnel appointments to announce this evening.
Great. We'll move on to our presentations. Our first one is the FY24 Annual Audit Report and Annual Comprehensive Financial Report.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. I'm going to invite Mr. Tyler Farnsworth to come join us. He's a director with PB Mayors, who's conducted our audit for the last 3 years approximately. The partner in charge of the audit, Mr. Garber, presented to the FABC at our February board meeting. He couldn't join us tonight, so Mr. Farnsworth is here to fill in. Thank you.
Thank you. I am just going to go over very briefly the financial statements. We could spend all night here going over the financial statements in detail, so I'm just going to go quickly. So So there's 3 opinions in the financial statements that we, the auditors, issue. The first one is over the financial statements, and we issued an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, the best opinion we can issue. And then there's 2 others in the back of the financials, one over the controls over the financial reporting, and one over the compliance and controls over the federal programs. And we had no findings there, so 3 clean opinions. So that's all I was really going to touch on the financial statements. And then us auditors issued a separate report called Results of the Audit. And that just has some required communications we're required to give to the board. And so that includes any new accounting pronouncements, which there were a couple, but nothing significant. There was no unusual transactions, no audit adjustments, no uncorrected misstatements, no disagreements with management. Everybody was great to work with, and they got us everything timely. We didn't encounter any difficulties with the audit. And so that's pretty much all I am required to disclose. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything?
Anyone? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, staff, for giving us a clean audit.
Again.
Moving on to the FY '25 mid-year financial update. Mr. Fulmer.
Yes. Good evening again. So I provided this update to the FABC as well at their last meeting and previewed it with them prior to the full board meeting. I want to just touch quickly on how our enrollment is sitting, and then our average daily membership is really what drives our state revenue. So if you don't recall, we projected about 31,700 students. Our September 30th actual was about 31,436. So the year before, we were several hundred students over Mr. White's projection. The year before that, he was 1 off, so there's going to be some fluctuations. And this year, he was a few hundred short. And I also wanted to show that at January 31st, we've continued to grow. So we had some discussion during the work session about some of our demographics of those students, but we do continue to grow throughout the school year. Our average daily membership, the budget number was 31,275, and that's normal for our ADM, which is what the state calculates our revenue off of, is always going to be lower than our enrollment for various reasons. But our updated ADM at mid-year based on the governor's calc tool was 31,228, so we were actually very close there to the point where we're not concerned about lost revenue. Just high level showing you where our total revenue comes from in our operating fund, primarily our state funding of 52%, and then you add in the sales tax of another 9%. And then we have our 37% comes from our county transfer. And our operating fund, very minimal funding from our federal funds, just a few $1 million. So looking at our state revenue, actually our some good news this year, a little bit different than prior years, is we're actually projecting to see an increase based on the mid-year state numbers of about $1.6 million. So that's made up of a little bit of basic aid increase, but also a sales tax increase of $1 million. If you recall, the last 2 years, we've actually been short on our state revenue at mid-year. And then we've had to be very conservative with our spending for the remaining of the year to make sure we don't overspend. So big increase over the prior year. We're also continuing to see that, reports of positive financial position at the state level. And we've talked about that when it came to the January 26 budget, the FY 26 budget that we're working on, but also it's true for FY 25, which is where you'll see some of why we have an increase of about $1.5 million there. Just caution that we have seen sales tax fluctuation in previous years. So even last year, when we saw a decrease in our sales tax at mid-year projected from the state, when we got to the end of the year, we actually saw it jump the other direction, which is why we had a carryover at the end of FY 24 of I believe we ended up with $4.5 million of carryover. So that can fluctuate. It used to be a little bit more stable, so we'll continue to keep an eye on that. So overall, we're not seeing any adjustments in any of our other revenue lines other than our state revenue increase. So that's positive news, is that $1.7 million increase. We always assume that we're going to receive our full county transfer. Federal, we've seen some fluctuation there in the past, but this year, as we've adjusted our budget to actuals, is projecting actually dead on for our federal, for impact aid and some other of our smaller federal dollars, funding sources. As we look at expenditures, a reminder that 85% of our budget is compensation, and compensation lasts throughout the year. So it's the kind of the biggest bucket that we can, sometimes don't have control over. And the way our fundings or our payrolls work is just because we get to June 30th doesn't mean our payroll is done. We actually issue more over the summer because we have 10-month employees that are paid over 12 months. So that pay actually gets stretched. So as you look at this, we've only expended, even though we're kind of past the midway point or at the midway point, we haven't spent 55% of our budget yet, or 50% of our budget yet, because some of those payrolls actually go into August 1st. Our 12-month employees are a little bit cleaner, but our 10 and 11-month employees are paid over 12 months. I always, like to share this, at least the last few years, because it's been positive. The average years of experience of our teacher continues to climb. So we had several years where we were in a decline, where we were seeing our employees shift to more new teachers, a lot of concentration of our employees with 0 to 5 years of experience. And for the last 3 years straight, we've seen that number climb. It doesn't seem like big jumps, but when you really calculate our total compensation and benefits, and you take just that fraction of what we budget a teacher at, that can have a huge swing there. Luckily, the last couple of years, as we've adjusted to that, as we've seen that climb, we're not seeing ourselves projecting to be underneath our compensation and benefit budget, or I should say over budget, and not enough funds. So our average years of experience is at 12.13 this year, so it's an increase over last year that was at 11.79. It kind of shows that the work that we've done to our teacher scale and the improvements we've made to our mid-year experienced teachers and license scale folks is working. As we look at some of our other compensation or non-compensation expenditures, legal, we're definitely over budget by legal and about $500,000. We do expect that's going to tail off majorly. So as you all recall, we've had some land cases that we've been dealing with, and a lot of those have settled down. So those were really, a lot of that's primarily for 1 or 2 cases that have settled or soon to be settled. Also, just maintenance on our bus transportation fleet, seeing a little bit of an increase there over budget of about $300,000. On the flip side of that, with transportation, we're actually seeing a savings on our fuel. So a couple of years ago, we had to increase our budget up to about $3 million. So it was almost about $1.5 million swing in our fuel that we had to add because of fuel prices going up. Luckily, this year, we're seeing that level off and actually seeing some savings this year. In the FY26 budget, part of our adjustments to the base budget where we had savings, part of that line is fuel savings of about $150,000. I didn't want to take the whole $500 and put it back into the budget because we don't know what's going to happen with fuel prices and we could see it jump back up, but felt comfortable enough that we could take that down $150,000. Our projecting savings in our compensation and benefits of about $2.4 million. Once again, caution that we are still early in that. Just a reminder, as I already mentioned, that we pay employees all the way up until August 1st. And we can always see fluctuations in our substitute pay and hourly and overtime pay. So, but we've actually, the last few years have really been close with our projections, so I feel pretty confident in that number. And I want to point out that we are going to touch on our health benefits costs in a few minutes as well. So excluding health benefits, we have a savings of $2.4 million. Overall, with some of the overages projecting about $2 million in surplus. So you take that $2 million in surplus, that 2.1, and you add it to the revenue surplus, we have an overall projected surplus in the operating fund of approaching $4 million. I actually think it could be a little bit higher than that right now because we always see some departmental savings as we close out the year. Not every budget gets spent down to, the penny. So we'll have a few $1,000s here, and that starts to add up across all of our departments. So I expect that number to come up just a little bit. Want to touch on our other funds because operating fund is just one piece of the school division. In the school nutrition fund, currently has a deficit and projected to have a deficit throughout the rest of the year. That's actually planned because they had a surplus from previous years, so part of their budget was spending on equipment for the kitchens. So they know they're not gonna have revenue and they had cash, they had a fund balance from prior years that they're spending down. It's actually a requirement from the state. They're not allowed to carry a very large surplus, so we're spending those funds down. Fleet services fund is actually projected to be almost spot on at the end of the year. I'm going to start at workers' comp, then I'll work back to the left to our health benefits fund. So for workers' comp, we went to a fully insured workers' comp fund last year, so it's very predictable now, projected to pretty much break even there in our workers' comp fund. Health benefits is where we probably have a longer discussion, and we'll have to come back in March to bring additional discussion back to the board for a decision. So right now, we're already seeing a deficit of about $3.8 million. Now, we see fluctuations in health benefits every year, but at the start of this school year, we've actually seen a larger jump for the first 6 months than we have in previous years. So when we project that out, has an overall deficit of about $7 million. I want to show this chart, but I'm going to explain it really quickly. So the purple at the bottom is what our employees contribute to our health benefits fund. The blue line is the employer, and the green line is total contribution. So it's just really employer plus employees. So that's the total amount that we're paying in. So whether it's Stafford Schools or our employees, what we're paying in to cover our health insurance costs. The red line is our health claims expense. So what our total expected expenditures are for FY25 and then the years prior based on actuals. You see, we lined very closely. We were spot on for several years. We had a lot of savings in the years prior to FY20. And then in FY23, we saw a little bit of a jump. Some of that was planned because we had big surpluses in our health benefits fund, so we knew we could budget aggressively in case we saw savings or we saw some jumps. We knew we had a fund balance to cover any overages. But what we're seeing in FY25 is that we were on pace to jump significantly, and it's not really a unique trend for Stafford. It's a nationwide trend, and it has been for years. Stafford Schools has been kind of breaking that trend, though, and we've always been below that market average. That market can be anywhere to 15 to 20% growth each year, and we've really been hovering in the single digits. So if you look at our increases, so FY23 actual was about a 4%, FY24 actual, we jumped up to close to 9%, but FY25 projected, currently on pace for 24%. I will say we've talked to our Anthem provider, and they think it's going to start to level off. Don't get too concerned that we're going to always have ups and downs. And we have seen that a little bit so this is really looking through December 31st, and as we've tracked some of our January and February bills, we've seen those come down a little bit. We still think, my staff and I still feel like we're going to be over budget in those lines, which is why in our FY26 budget, we're contributing an extra $4 million as well. So that $4 million still, really isn't the entire amount here, because we're projected at 8.6. So there's some budget to budget differences there, but it's definitely something we have to continue to monitor. Right now, with this, we're projected to be over. We only have a reserve in our health benefits fund of over $4.5 million, $4.8 million. So we know we're going to exceed our reserve. So we're going to have to come back and look at ways to reallocate if this trend continues. So right now, our schedule is to come back in March. But I wanted to at least discuss what some of those potential ideas would be. We have in our operating fund, as I already discussed, we have about $2.4 million in projected compensation and benefit savings. So that's one option. We could redirect funds. We also have an OPEB trust fund that is used for retirees specifically. And so we have a couple options there that we could pull from that OPEB trust fund that has about $45 million in it, actually. We're in a pooled trust with other localities in Virginia, and our balance of that we've contributed, and then it's grown with interest, is about $45 million. So we can either pay some of the costs of our current retirees, or we can have it help us offset the costs of the retiree health insurance premium, which is about $2.2 million a year. So we want to come back in March to kind of have the board take action on that. Part of that action will be requesting additional appropriation, because even though we have the funds, we still have to get the appropriation from the Board of Supervisors. We've done this the last few years as we've exceeded what we had in our budget, but we had the funds to cover it. So we just need the Board of Supervisors to give us that legal authority to spend the money that we already have allocated. All right, any questions?
Does anyone have questions or comments on this? Ms. Healy?
When we were looking at the benefits portion of the estimated salary, it shows 28%, which you said did not include health benefits.
Yes, ma'am,
If
correct.
we included the health benefits, what percentage would that go up to? You don't have to give me this answer now, but I'd like to know that, because traditionally, we, in the past, would budget 40%. But, this is going to be a very high year. I mean, I actually watched the video from the FAB, and I was very concerned about, these expenses. And I think we're going to certainly, make sure that staff is well aware of this, because we're not going to be in a position to fund these kinds of overages. I mean, you're talking about $9 million increase just for this year.
Right.
And then we've somewhat, I don't want to say arbitrarily, but we've decided to put $4 million in next year, which is not even going to, bridge the gap. So it's something I'm concerned about, us looking into, because only half of our employees actually benefit from the health benefits. And the ones that do, I'm sure are very grateful for having it, but there's half of our employees that receive no benefit for it, but yet we're, putting, millions and millions in that they get nothing from.
Yeah, so the percentage of what we budget for an employee is gonna vary based on what their salary is, but we have a fixed dollar amount that's around $9,000 that we have to budget for every employee. We know that not every employee is gonna take health benefits, so that $9,000 is actually taking that into account, because it's kind of an average per FTE. So it starts to even out, because you're correct, it's not, it's a little higher than 50%, but it's very close to 50% that of our employees that actually participate in our health benefits program.
So we benefit $9,000 per employee across the board? Is that what?
Not across the board, for new employees, if we're gonna add a new FTE. So part of that $4 million increase is to help cover for those employees
Okay.
that we're adding in the budget.
And does that take into consideration that on the average, 1 out of every 2?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
uses it? Wow. So that means it's really costing us $18,000 if we're counting 2 for 1, right?
Yeah, and so we're fully,
Per
yeah,
employee.
averaged out, because we're fully self-insured. So every dollar that employee charges, or if a medical office sends a bill, we're paying that, according to the plan, obviously. But we're not partially insured, where Anthem is picking up the bill for some of that. We are fully insured, and because we're large enough, we can do that, and over time, it saves a considerable amount of money. And so that's where it's more of an average that's allocated across
So
all
we
of
don't
our
have a cap
employees.
anymore? We used to have.
We do have
We used
a,
to have a cap that we were insured up to a certain amount, and once it was some very high amount, but once we hit that, then,
yeah,
some.
yeah,
the insurer would.
yeah, you're correct. So we have, I would say, probably less than 10 employees a year that hit that cap. And I want to say it's $350,000. It's either 250 or 350 is what we have as our cap. So we do, it's called a stop loss insurance coverage. But for those employees, we pay up to that number, and then anything above that, Anthem covers. And so we have a very small annual premium that's paid to Anthem for that stop loss, but everything else is kind of dollar for dollar.
Are there any other questions or comments on this topic?
I have a comment.
Halsted?
Well, it's a question, comment, I guess. My first comment is, Chris, I love how you just come up here and everything that you're like, everybody totally gets what I'm saying. They understand all of these words and these big things. And so I appreciate that about you. But sometimes I'm like, huh, okay. But that's what leads me to my question, the OPEB, but that you're talking about this trust fund thing or
Yeah.
whatever. This is kind of the first time I'm hearing about this. I feel like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Is that wrong? Is that what I heard you kind of, is that the explanation of how that works, or can you?
Right.
elaborate.
Yeah, so we have an actuarial evaluation that's done that says of all your
Maybe you could
employees,
tell her what it stands for.
other post-employment benefits. So it's,
Started.
yeah, it's for our retirees, what is it gonna cost us? And our current employees, so over a long period of time, what is it gonna cost us to pay their health insurance costs? Because we offer health insurance after they retire. And so there's a value of roughly, you know, I wanna say it's like 120 million, as they say, the total liability. So we have about 45 million in there, but we're still significantly underfunded. But right now, our approach is like a pay-go model. So we're paying for those retirees now, we're not trying to use that funding. So ideally, we get that fund up to 120 million, and then we're just using that fund every year to pay for retirees' benefit costs. But right now, we're just using, you know, kind of our operating dollars or health benefits dollars to pay for those retirees' costs. I don't know if I helped or not, but, right, yeah.
Mr. Fulmer, we've never taken anything out, have we?
No,
We've
ma'am.
only put into OPEB. We haven't taken anything out.
Not to my
But it's there
knowledge,
if we
yeah.
need it.
Any other questions or comments on this topic? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move on to our awards and recognitions.
All right, good evening, school board members and Dr. Smith. This evening, we'll recognize students and staff that epitomize our values of students' integrity, respect, community, opportunity, and excellence. Will all of our school board members please join us at the podium? Our students, too. Stafford County Public Schools proudly recognizes February 2025 as School Board Appreciation Month, honoring the vital role of school board members in shaping the future of public education. As champions of opportunity and advocates for excellence, they work with parents, educators, businesses, students, and the community to create pathways for student success. Their leadership directly impacts instruction, innovation, and educational opportunities for all students. We encourage the Stafford community to join us in celebrating and thanking our school board members for their dedication to academic achievement and the well-being of our students. Thank you. And a photo. And a photo. Yep, we're gonna squeeze in. Ms. Sigmund and everyone else, come on over. Thank you. Will Board Clerk Missy Hall and Deputy Clerk Angie Murgo please join us at the podium? The School Board of Stafford County proudly recognizes the dedication and hard work of our school board clerks, Missy Hall and Angie Murgo, for their outstanding service. Their meticulous record-keeping, organizational support, and commitment to communication are essential to the success of schools. Their efforts ensure transparency, efficiency, and strong connections between the board, superintendent, and community. In appreciation of their invaluable contributions, we are proud to celebrate February 17th through the 21st as School Board Clerk Appreciation Week. This annual observance across Virginia honors the vital role they play in school governance. Thank you, Ms. Murgo and Ms. Hall. Will Stafford High School teachers Dickie Hall and Tammy Thomas please join us at the podium? February marks National Career and Technical Education Month, recognizing the impacts of CTE in equipping students and adults with essential skills for high-demand careers. This proclamation highlights the importance of CTE in fostering workforce readiness, economic growth, and technological advancement. By integrating practical learning with core academic subjects, CTE strengthens Virginia's talent pipeline and enhances career opportunities. We proudly recognize Dickie Hall, Tammy Thomas, and all of our career and technical education staff for their dedication to advancing career and technical education. This proclamation reaffirms our commitment to supporting CTE programs, fostering industry partnerships, and preparing students for success in a competitive, evolving job market. Thank you. Will Mountain View High School Black Student Union sponsor Sarah Schuler and co-sponsor Corey Galt please join us at the podium? Yes, please. February is Black History Month, a time for everyone to honor and reflect on the incredible contributions of African Americans throughout history. From pioneering achievements in science, government, and industry, and business, to the rich cultures and traditions that have shaped the nation, Black history is an essential part of the American experience. During this month, all are encouraged to celebrate the ingenuity, creativity, and progress of Black Americans and participate in educational events that recognize their lasting impact on society. Thank you. Would Ms. Katrina Clement of Stafford High School please join us at the podium? The Stafford County School Board proclaims March 2nd through 8th, 2025 is School Social Worker Appreciation Week, joining the national celebration of school social workers and their vital role in helping students overcome academic, social, and emotional challenges. This year's theme, Social Work, Compassion plus Action, reflects their dedication to student success. Tonight, we recognize Katrina Clement and all the school social workers for their essential work in mental health support, intervention, and community outreach, strengthening school-based programs and student well-being. Will all of our social workers here please stand and be recognized? Thank you to all of you for everything you do to support our students, families, and staff. Will Dr. Goddard and the team from Anthony Burns Elementary here tonight please join us at the podium? When Ariane Cooper experienced a medical emergency while picking up her children from school at Anthony Burns, Dr. Goddard and Ms. Boligates quickly assessed the situation and called for an ambulance. The front office staff, Ms. Fuchs and Ms. Torres, along with first grade teacher Ms. Thompson, kept Ms. Cooper's children occupied and helped Ms. Cooper retrieve medical information from her vehicle. They also called Ms. Cooper's emergency contacts to let them know she was having a medical emergency. After saving her life, Dr. Goddard and Ms. Boligates called to check on Ms. Cooper the following day. Ms. Cooper credits Dr. Goddard and Ms. Boligates for saving her life that day. She had undiagnosed pneumonia in addition to an immune-compromised system and believes she may have died without their intervention. Dr. Goddard and her team went above and beyond to make sure Ms. Cooper and her children were safe and felt cared for. Thank you, Dr. Goddard and team. Your actions reflect the care and passion poured into every student and family. Thank you for being true community heroes. Will Ms. Gwen Gilliam and Carter Fitch please join us at the podium? The Government Finance Officers Association awarded Stafford County Public Schools the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024. This prestigious recognition is given to businesses that meet the highest standards in governmental budgeting, demonstrating excellence in financial planning, policy documentation, and transparency. This recognition is a direct result of the exceptional work of our budget team, Gwen Gilliam and Carter Fitch. Crafting a budget that meets the highest national standards is no small task. It requires strategic planning, clear communication, and a deep understanding of how to align resources with the needs of our students, staff, and community. Gwen and Carter not only met these high expectations, but exceeded them, producing a budget document that was recognized among the best in the field. Thank you, Gwen and Carter, for your detailed, precise, and thoughtful work. Congratulations on an excellent job again and again.
The next item on our agenda is our student representatives report. Ms. Irish?
Good evening, members of the board, administrators, and community members. As we move into the second semester, we have been focusing on laying the foundation for stronger student engagement, support, and representation using our very own strategic plan. Our goal is to create more direct and accessible ways for students to voice their concerns and actively participate in their education. This month, we are launching a form for student feedback, which we hope to promote throughout schools on QR codes. We have also gained access to our Instagram and email accounts so students have direct ways to contact us. Beyond communication, we are working to expand academic support through peer-to-peer tutoring. We are currently researching existing tutoring options and will soon take next steps, surveying students to assess interest and meeting with administrators and teachers to identify gaps in tutoring accessibility. Our goal is to develop a tutoring system that is both effective and widely available to those who need it. Additionally, we are prioritizing civic engagement. We are working on identifying local organizations where students can volunteer, increasing awareness of school board meetings through social media announcements. Student representation remains a core focus, and we are initiating informal conversations at school events to hear student concerns directly. We have also developed a form to collect student perspectives on key issues, as I previously said. As we progress, March will be a time for implementation, where we hope to strengthen outreach efforts, promote tutoring, and create spaces for students to engage in meaningful discussions about school-related issues. We look forward to continuing this work and ensuring every student voice is heard. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Tonight, we will be having our public hearing on the FY26 budget. 3 minutes are allotted to each speaker or group. Speakers shall identify themselves by their name and organizational affiliation if there is one, and citizens shall limit their comments to the subject of the FY26 budget. Citizen comment which is profane, abusive, or threatens imminent physical harm shall be ruled out of order. Ms. Hall, would you call the first few names?
Yes, ma'am. The first speaker will be Logan Fellenstein. The second will be Shamgar Connors, followed by Shannon Fingerholz.
Good evening. I stand before you not just as an advocate for teachers. I'm Logan Fellenstein. I'm from Drew Middle School, and I'm a teacher. But I also stand here for the future of our students, schools, and communities. We all agree education is a critical investment, but that must include fair, competitive pay for educators shaping young minds. While I appreciate the proposed cost of living increase, it's the bare minimum. If it only offsets rising costs, it eliminates the value of experience. It also fails to properly compensate teachers who go above and beyond, sending a dangerous message to current and future educators. Let's start with experience. Teaching is a profession that requires skill, adaptability, and years of expertise to truly master. And yet, under the current proposal, the increase in pay accounts only for the recent cost of living. It takes away our step increase that comes from experience. In the previous budget, a brand new teacher received a salary of $50,500. Next year, the proposed budget states that a brand new teacher is worth a salary of $50,525. I'm not a math teacher, but I can, without a calculator, see that the new number is not an increase of 3%. Personally, I will start next year with 7 years of experience, and though there has been a 2.9% increase in cost of living, my pay will be just $30 more than what a teacher with that same experience was paid this year. I've included for you a chart showing just that, comparing the current pay scale to the proposed pay scale, with a 3.05% increase calculated for you, along with the difference in the final columns. Calling the current proposal a 3.05% increase breeds distrust. When we fail to reward experienced educators, we risk losing them, either to burnout, to other districts that offer better pay, or even to entirely different professions. We need to ensure that teachers see a future in this career, one that includes financial growth along with their professional growth. Then there are stipends, an often overlooked issue that directly impacts teacher retention and student opportunities. Teachers don't just teach. They coach, lead clubs, mentor, and take on additional responsibilities that enrich schools. Passion alone, though, doesn't pay the bills. If we want robust extracurriculars and teacher leadership, we must compensate accordingly. Why do lead middle school arts, CTE, and PE teachers receive half the stipend of their counterparts? Why haven't stipends increased with the cost of living? Why do middle school orchestra directors earn nearly $500 less than band directors? Over 7 years, that $3,500 matters. I've highlighted these discrepancies in the second and third tables. At the end of the day, our budget reflects our values. If we claim education is a priority, we must pay teachers what they deserve. Otherwise, we will lose them and our students will suffer the most. So I urge you, do not approve a budget that leaves teachers questioning their value. Push for one that proves their worth. The result, stronger educators and brighter futures for our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, hey, my name is Chamber Connors. I'm from the Harwood District, and this is about the budget, but I wanted to get over, talk about a couple things first. A couple months ago, I gave a well-sorted speech about how the USA is a Christian country founded upon Christian principles by Christians for Christians. It's on my YouTube channel. Just type in Chamber Connors. It's easy to find it. After my speech, two school board members.
Keep it to the budget, please.
Okay, I'm getting there. This is about the budget. After my speech, two school board members went on virtue signaling rants about how diversity is our strength.
Sir,
Point of order.
we'd have to tie this directly to the budget, please.
Okay, this is about the budget. You guys sit there in the budget right now, and you had a DEI meeting yesterday, which is going to defund Stafford schools, right? Remember that? You had a DEI meeting yesterday. Yesterday here, DEI committee. And what did they say? They said, oh, well, this is important. We need to continue this committee. There's an executive order by Trump saying these things are banned. But no, you still wanted to do it. You want to increase taxes for the county, but you want to do things that are going to make you lose money. Make it make sense. How does it make any sense? And you want to hire 36 more teachers right now that for ESL, it's going to cost at least a couple million, right? For over 4,000 illegal immigrants that can't speak English. Right? And you're facilitating the illegal invasion of our country. You are doing that. This school board is allowing that to happen, okay? And so that's the point. It's like you guys want to focus on diversity and do all this stuff about diversity when the reality is that you're going to cause the Stafford to lose funding.
No, look, this is a public hearing on the budget. Their citizen comments can come later if you need them to be. But Maureen stipulated at the beginning, the discussion is about the budget. It has to be about what's important to you and the money and the way we spend it.
All right, well, that's part.
Otherwise, it's out of order.
All right, well, that's the main thing is that you have in your budget, one of the main points was you wanted to hire 36 new teachers, right? That's in the budget, right? Yeah. Okay, that's in the budget. You want to hire all these teachers for people for ESL. And then you say there's all these problems with funding, and you can't fund this, and you need to raise the taxes. Why are you gonna raise taxes for Stafford County to have people pay more money for people that are illegally invading the country? That's a fact. That's something anyone can look up. You guys have the data, right? You can look it all up. That's part of the budget. So I don't know how you can ask people that live in this county, oh, hey, we wanna raise your taxes so we can hire people to teach kids that shouldn't even be around, because they're illegally breaking our laws. That's a fact. You can cry about it all you want in the audience, okay? Keep crying. That's a
Speak to
fact.
us only, please. Have respect for what you're doing.
When are you gonna tell them to stop?
I don't have to tell them to stop.
Oh, yeah,
if
you don't
can
have to?
stay on the
Okay, so everyone
topic.
can just
Stay on
comment
the
and heckle all
topic
they
and be
want?
respectful.
Hey, people are,
Your time is up now. Oh. Have
it's
a
not,
nice
I
day.
have 25 seconds left.
Uh-uh.
Ms. Fingerholz?
Shannon Fingerholtz, Hartwood District. We know we have varying needs that requiring varying amounts of funding. Over the last 5 years during the budget season that I've been watching, I've seen graphs and charts that compare the pay between Stafford County and our surrounding communities. We use this information to show our community, to show our teachers, to show our board of supervisors that our teachers are important and that pay makes a difference. And that pay may be what drives them to work somewhere else or to start somewhere else completely, and then we never get their new ideas and new experience. Because teachers are a very limited resource. What I don't remember seeing, though, is how we compare other communities for the pay of our support staff. I may have missed it, but I don't think I've seen it in 5 years. Is this because we take it for granted that they will not go to other districts because they can't afford daycare and they need their schedules to match their kids or their grandkids? Do we not look at comparisons because we don't want them to see how far behind we actually are in Stafford? Are we taking them for granted because most of the folks that take on our support staff roles do so to make ends meet in their own personal home with their own personal families, and they don't have the flexibility to travel the extra distances to other localities? Do we feel that if they do leave, they are easier to replace, so we don't make the extra effort to meet the promises that have been laid out for them? What is the why behind the choice that we make? Whatever the reason, it is time to stop proposing crumbs of the step scale and stop saying next year for them. I actually forgot my scale, my can at my chair, so it's okay. Just picture my little can. Next year, we'll need an additional $7 million just to staff the new schools. Will the support staff have to wait again? The needs are growing, and progress has been made, which is great, but we can't afford to backslide because it will be twice as hard, 3 times as hard, to ever get caught up again. Let's not put support staff in the can and then keep kicking it into the next year. And then a side note from that, something that we don't realize, I know in our budget slides we saw that 1% of the budget comes from federal money, but actually a lot more than $2 million comes from federal money. Head Start, our food funding, things like that. And so our community needs to realize that the federal funding we receive is millions and millions of dollars, and it is actually very important to a lot of our younger kids and a lot of our disadvantaged kids as well. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the final 3 speakers will be Michelle Wickman, Molly Denham, and Deanna Fisher.
Good evening, members of the board. Dr. Smith, my name is Michelle Wickman, Garrisonville District. I've put 2 kids through Stafford County Schools since kindergarten, and I was an educator here for a decade. So you probably have an idea of exactly what I'm going to say this evening, because I spent my decade here saying many of those same things over and over again. But I give kudos to y'all because the budgets that you sent across the street the past few years have demonstrated your priorities really well. I give kudos to Dr. Smith for recognizing the needs we have here and making hard decisions to develop the budget presented, which still has a significant funding gap. Dr. Smith, it's your first year in Stafford, and I get it. Present something logical and reasonable. Show you're working to make cuts where you can. You'd think there's a greater chance of getting closer to what we need, right? But we've seen this before. Much of what I've had to repeat without seeing results is happening across the street. That's the definition of insanity, right? Repeating the same behavior and expecting different results. I hope there are a lot of constituents paying attention right now, and I'm speaking to the board as well because you're residents of Stafford and you vote here too. If you're like me and you're feeling fairly helpless because the country's a dumpster fire right now, focus your energy on what you can do for your community, because the only thing that's going to affect real change in Stafford is to ensure we elect representatives who will actually prioritize school funding. Our median income in this county is too high for our funding to be so low. But in the meantime, we've got to make it through this budget season, right? So my request tonight is for you to really consider whether your budget priorities are fully met. One of those priorities is to attract and retain high-quality staff, and another is to allocate differentiated funding based on school population. If those are really priorities, then please include full implementation of Phase 4 of the licensed salary scale, and get your support staff up to Phase 3, where they're supposed to be this year. If inflation is 2.9% and insurance costs are going up, then we're actually moving backwards with a 3% raise. Every single competing school division to the north now has the ability to negotiate their contracts. There is nothing we can claim here that trumps that benefit, so we've got to up our game when it comes to attracting and maintaining. Stick with the 5-year plan. The BOS has had it for the past 2 years. They should know what to expect, and your staff sure did because they looked at that plan too. Ensure that differentiated site allocations are included in the budget so that our schools with higher populations of English language learners and students with special needs are taken care of. And we're not making redistricting decisions around free and reduced lunch capacity. I am really sick of hearing the phrase keep the lights on, and I'm sure y'all are sick of having to use it. I encourage this board to add every single legitimate need we have to the budget request. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. Please don't misrepresent the reality of what our students and staff need to be successful and feel valued. And more importantly, don't devalue them by not being willing to ask. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Molly Denham from the Hartwood District. I've been extremely disappointed to attend recent budget meetings and listen to the current proposal being described as keeping the status quo, meeting our basic needs, and we wish we could do more. When asked when we would get back on track with the promises made to our staff over the past few years, I was told it'll be next year. But with all due respect, I just don't see that happening. This year, it was growth in SOQ. Next year, it will be staffing needs at the high school, and following with elementary 18 and 19 staffing needs. There is simply no path to getting our overworked employees a payable living wage, and this budget does just what it says it does. It keeps the status quo of doing nothing substantial. I would like to read comments sent to me by one of your school employees. Her story is one I have heard more than once from those who are unable or unwilling to speak up because they're worried about their job security. These comments come from a staff member who has been working at Stafford County since 2000 and has invested 25 years in our schools. I'm trying to recall a time when we didn't continue to hear about ongoing budget challenges negatively impacting pay increases, specifically for non-licensed staff. While licensed staff earned a significant pay increase for each of their phases 1 through 3 over the past few years, which was long overdue, many service personnel felt overlooked, undervalued, not compensated fairly, and left behind once again. After only receiving the standard average, and that's average, 3% pay increase year after year, non-licensed staff finally received Phase 1 this year, while licensed staff is on Phase 4. Initially, support staff remained quiet and hopeful, patiently waiting for their turn to receive the same attention, only to be told the funding isn't available repeatedly. We finally began speaking out and showing up relentlessly and battled for our recent pay, one pay increase. Here we are again, tirelessly advocating for fair and equal pay to receive Phase 2. Why the difference in the phase pay scales between two job classifications? The minimal pay increases we have received are simply not substantial, especially with the current inflation rate. Meanwhile, we are losing employees, both licensed and non-licensed, to our neighboring counties due to competitive pay increases year after year. Stafford County must invest in their people, not only those running the classrooms, but those who are running the schools. We must be competitive with our neighboring counties. The system is broken and has been for years. This is an embarrassment and unacceptable. To say we are frustrated beyond measure is a masterpiece of understatement. We know you must be exhausted from constantly hearing pleas for more fair and competitive pay, because we sure as hell are. We need to do better, invest in the schools, and include those running the schools. Chairwoman Sigmund and board members, I agree with my friend, and I am extremely disappointed in the meager budget put forth so far. We need to do better. We need to give the Board of Supervisors the truth and ask for what we need and ask for what our staff deserves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Deanna Fisher. I live in the Garrisonville district. A large portion of the school system budget comes from Stafford citizen property taxes. I'm here tonight to ask you to be good stewards of our money. It's prudent, especially now that the government is finding so much waste, for the school board to also look to reduce waste and find ways to improve learning that don't involve a big budget increase. Our property taxes have already been raised 30% in 3 years. We need to spend smarter, not bigger. We need to look for other sources of funding, state and federal funding, and solutions other than raising taxes even further. We need to apply common sense. We all wish we had endless money to fully fund everything, but the reality is we do not. Stafford County schools have received funding increases over the last several years, but has education in Stafford improved? Only 49% passed the 7th grade math SOL last year. Many parents feel like their children are not learning as they should be. It's been in the news lately that the U.S. spends more per pupil than other countries, but is near the bottom for learning. I've seen the number that we spend over $13,000 per student per year, pupil per year in Stafford, but homeschooling costs about $1,000 per year, and those students are scoring better. We need to change what we're doing. One question I have regarding the 36 new ESL teachers, how many of the students needing them are citizens versus here illegally? President Trump recently signed an executive order prohibiting spending federal money on people here illegally. Have you looked into getting relief from the requirement to educate students that are not citizens? If so, could you tell the public what is going on with that process? Another question I have is regarding the proposed raises for teacher salaries. I personally think teachers deserve a lot more pay than what they get. However, given the funding constraints in Stafford, we should also look at other ways to attract and keep good teachers. I've heard that money isn't always the biggest factor. For many, it's the environment. Do teachers feel safe? Is there a way to give higher salaries and higher raises to the good teachers that we want to stay here? Do teachers feel supported? Have you asked teachers what would make them happier here? If so, please share that information. Are we following the new executive orders so that we don't lose federal funding? Why is there still a DEI advisory committee that met last night? Why do we not have a policy to prohibit biological males from entering female bathrooms in our schools? Can you please tell us what you're doing to comply with the orders so we don't lose federal funding? Also, why are you proposing salary increases for yourselves? And why are you hosting an event for realtors, and how much does that cost? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, there are no further people signed up.
Okay. We'll move forward with our general citizen comments. Rules are pretty much the same. 3 minutes are allotted to each speaker or group. Speakers shall identify themselves by name and organizational affiliation if there is one. Speakers shall also announce the purpose or topic of their comments. Citizen comment, which is profane, abusive, or which threatens imminent physical harm, shall be ruled out of order. Ms. Hall?
Madam Chair, the first 3 speakers will be Karen Felton, Abram Marsh, and Shamgar Connors.
Good evening. My name is Karen Felton, and I reside in the Garrisonville district. I am here to share information about Black history, a moment in Black history. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. The 2025 Black History Month theme is African Americans and Labor, which focuses on the profound ways African Americans contribute to the landscape of this country. I stand here tonight as a member of the Fredericksburg area alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, with the honor of highlighting the contributions of Arthur Philip Randolph. He was a prominent African-American civil rights leader and labor unionist known for advocating for African-American workers in the labor movement. Inspired by the writings of leading Black intellectual W.E.B. Du Bois, Randolph moved to New York City in 1911. He settled in Harlem, where he found a job working on the switchboard in an apartment building and enrolled in courses at the City College of New York, where I was educated as well in upstate New York. His legacy and contributions will go on to include Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. Randolph founded this union in 1925, which became the first predominantly African-American labor union to receive a charter from the American Federation of Labor. It fought for better wages and working conditions for Black railway workers. Next, civil rights activism. He was a key figure in the civil rights movement, advocating for racial equality and labor rights. Randolph organized the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963, which was instrumental in raising awareness about economic and racial injustices. Influential on legislation. Through his activism, Randolph contributed to significant civil rights legislation, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Arthur Philip Randolph is remembered as one of the giants of the American labor movement and pioneer in both labor and civil rights movements. His efforts laid the groundwork for future generations of activists. His work emphasized the intersection of economic and racial justice, making him a crucial figure in American history. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Marsh, Dr. Marsh?
I don't see him here. Maybe we can circle back to him at the end.
Following Mr. Connor will be Christopher Parrish, Justin Thacker, and Everett Morgan.
What's up? Shamgar Connors, Harwood District. Last month I came here and I spoke with facts and data about court cases that showed that some of the vaccines that are being pushed by Stafford schools and a letter sent home to parents are actually dangerous and harming, killing children. I brought up a simple fact that if you want to be an advocate for vaccines, most likely because maybe the school's getting some kind of kickback or somehow, then maybe you should also respect parents' rights and notify them that legally they can refuse to get any vaccines if they don't want to, and Stafford schools have to honor that, right? I was shocked and appalled that one of the school members in the remarks from the board stated that while I respect parents' rights, I have a right to blah, 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 blah. Here's the issue. The first half of your sentence was great. That's cool. It's correct. But anything after the statement you say where you have some divine right to nullify parents' rights is where you close your mouth. This is exactly what people are absolutely sick of and disgusted with. Some liberal person that thinks that they have the right to ignore parents' rights, legal rights, and that this liberal somehow deserves to push their agenda on children against parents' wishes. And then this person went on a rant about the polio vaccine, not even an informed rant, not even acknowledging that the formula for the polio vaccine has drastically changed since 1996. So saying, oh, look at me when I was a kid, blah, 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 it's not the same. And ignoring that when the polio vaccine came out, cases of polio had already been going down drastically. I have an abundance of evidence that the polio symptoms were people experiencing because spraying of DDT and poisoning stuff. Now, I didn't submit all this to the school board yet because I wanted to talk about it first. I'm planning on submitting evidence that I expect every member of the board to read if they want to sit there and push vaccines on children, when I bet that not many on the board can even name the ingredients in the vaccines or potential side effects of those ingredients. I challenge anyone to dispute me on this. Go ahead. I have all this, the peer-reviewed data and scientific proof. I'll probably give you hundreds of emails. That's great. And another thing I'd like to note about the liberal vaxaholic cult, like I was in the audience last time. After my speech last month, the audience, there was a lady in the front of me. She spun around in her chair, head turned around like this, like 180 degrees. It was like out of a horror movie. And then she looked at me and she started yelling at me, and she was like, it was like she had rabies. You know that the HPV vaccine prevents genital warts? And I was just like, Mike, what's going on here? This happened after my speech last time. And I just said, no, they don't, because I just talked about the court data where it says that there's no proof that HPV vaccine has ever prevented even one case of cancer. It's done nothing, except it's maimed a lot of people. There's hundreds of dead kids that are suing Merrick and Garland for creating these things. Okay, you know, the thing is, there's also other ways to not get genital warts. It's called not hooking up with tons of people. But no, then she wasn't done. There was some kid next to him, like her 2 seats over, and she looked at him. She's like, are you gonna get the HPV vaccine? And it's like rabid craziness. And it's like this kid's just trying to sit there watching the meeting, all right? And then the reason I'm bringing this up is this is the perfect representation of what liberals think. Like, these are private medical choices, but that's how it feels to parents when you're sending home these things and not letting parents know that they have legal rights to refuse this stuff. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Christopher Parrish. I'm in the Garrisonville District. Good evening. I want to thank you for allowing me a few minutes to speak to the school board, parents in attendance, and everyone watching virtually. This evening, you will hear from many concerned parents and residents and teachers of Stafford County on many different topics. I myself want to focus on DEI and the school budget. On 14 February, President Trump issued an executive order mandating that all DEI programs immediately end within 14 days. There have been some rumors that this school board will simply just change the name from the DEI committee to something else. I really hope that's not true. This cannot happen and will not be tolerated. I, along with many others in Stafford, want to know what if the school board is complying with this executive order immediately, because if not, we are at risk of losing federal funding, and none of us want that. Secondly, I'm asking for crystal clear transparency on the school budget, as in where the funds are being earmarked for. As you're all aware, there's a budget crisis ongoing. How much of our budget will be earmarked towards adding additional ESL teachers for students who are non-English speaking of illegal immigrants? Also, I am seeing a proposal for a school board pay increase. I understand this, but I feel like the teachers and support staff deserve a pay increase first and approaching it to what they need. How is a pay increase fiscally responsible at this time during a budget crisis and when our Stafford County schools test at a below average rate for reading and math proficiency in the state of Virginia? Giving salary raises at this time, I just don't think is prudent. Everyone on the school board is an elected official. Therefore, you work for the constituents of Stafford County. Far too long, many of us, including myself, have stayed silent while wasteful spending and impractical policies get approved over and over again. For me, that ends now. I, along with many others, plan on being at every other school board meeting until we see change. Our kids deserve better. Lastly, I want to say to all the teachers in the room and support staff, thank you for everything you do. I know you have a thankless job, but you are appreciated by more than you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next 3 speakers, is Mr. Thacker here? Okay. Following Mr. Thacker, there are, or Ms. Everett? Okay. Following Ms. Everett, there are 2 additional speakers, Shannon Fingerholz and Deanna Fisher.
Hey, good evening. I'm Justin Thacker, the George Washington District. I'm PBM here in Stafford, South Stafford. I'd like to welcome Dr. Smith from White Oak and you know, everyone here. Good to hear. I hear a lot of talk about the budget, and you know, I think transparency is important, especially for Stafford County to understand part of what's going on. I think if I ran my business like Stafford County's running the budget right now, I'd have no business. So. And I'm not sure if you know this. 2 years ago, you set out an RFP. I own PBM. We're a large janitorial company here in Stafford. We clean the University of Mary Washington. We clean Geico. We clean multiple large companies across the country. Your RFP excluded us on the last 2 years. You pay $50,000 more a month to clean your schools than to use PBM here in Stafford to keep that tax revenue here in Stafford. I'm going to say that again. $50,000 more a month. That's one contract. You have painting, you have landscaping, you have carpentry, you have electrical, you have your food resources, you have your generators, you have your service. All these contracts are flawed. I will walk you, I would beseech you, 1 hour. I'll take that RFP and set it in front of you. If I'm not the smartest man in the world, I left here to play basketball at UNLV in the early 90s. My best friend's the head coach of the Washington Wizards up in DC. I've never seen a more eyes wide shut approach to a bid in my life. It's rigged. If you want to look at it, I'll show it to you. I won't come back here. If you give me 1 hour and look at it with me and you don't see what I see, I'll go away forever. $50,000 on one bid. Your facilities department, I work for massive companies everywhere, multiple school systems, University of Mary Washington, right up the street. I'm a tax-paying citizen. I own 56 Welling, I own multiple properties in South Stafford, I own multiple lots. I bought my ex-wife a nice big horse farm next to my farm. My taxes are $1,000 a month on that farm. Mine are $1,200 a month. I heard, what's your budget, like $400 million? Think about it. If you save 50 grand on one contract a month, that's a month. That's 600 a year. That's 3.5 over the 5 years that you had that contract. So, let's look at it. I'll come in and sit down right with you. I'll sit right with you, just me and you. We won't bring any bean counters. But wasn't it nice to see Dickie Hall? Dickie Hall was my shop teacher, and his son works for me at PBM. We are here in Stafford County. Keep that dollar in Stafford County. You're sending it to Crofton, Maryland. Crofton, Maryland. And spending $50,000 more of our taxpayers' dollar a month to do so. We can do it, and I really appreciate y'all's time. I know y'all work really hard. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Morgan Everett, and I live in the George Washington District, and I work at Brook Point High School as an administrative assistant. I like my job. I love how supportive my coworkers that are here with me tonight are. I love seeing our students develop into strong young adults, but that doesn't pay my bills at the end of the day. When I was looking at all the presentations today on my own time and all the attachments, all I could keep on seeing was the word licensed. And non-licensed was just forgotten about consistently. Are we forgotten about consistently? We absolutely feel it. We are pacified, giving empty hopes, and we are now being black, blue, and green. We have a work staff of knowledgeable, competent, caring people. We need to be able to live where we work, and with that, we invest back into our community. I understand that is a fragile ecosystem full of complex dynamics, and I can't imagine looking at the numbers that you guys do every single day. My eyes would go crossed. But I'm asking you guys to look up from those numbers and to recognize your employees. See us. We're here. Licensed and non-licensed is split that has been chosen over and over and over again. The gap is evident. We have been asked to take one for the team one too many times, and now we are demanding for more. More is to be included in the conversations of your budget proposals, in your presentations outside of this area, and inside of your data. More is to be appropriately compensated for the hard work that we contribute, and to be put on an actual livable pay scale. We know that the issue is going to be resolved by more than just our school board. It's going to need help from people across the street. We understand that. It's going to need help from people at the state level to get more funding. Being below 100 is insane. 117th is even crazier to me. So I understand the constraints that we're doing, but understand that it is this school board that is making us give those demands to us of giving us less time and time again. At the end of the day, I'm a teacher, I coach, I'm an admin assistant, which means that I do 4 jobs for one person. And the next coming years, we're making a lot of budget proposals to increase our capacity for all of our school programs. But with all of that needs assistance, admin assistance, non-licensed help. I couldn't see that anywhere in the budget. We're the grease of the machine. We're what helps keep it up. We want to do our job. Please let us stay in this county and do our jobs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon Fingerholtz. I can't even say my own name now. Shannon Fingerholtz, Hartwood District. This week is Public Schools Week. I didn't know if anybody knew that or not. So I want to say thank you to our bus drivers, our educators, our staff, coaches, nurses, counselors, resource officers, paras, interpreters, maintenance staff. The list goes on and on. All of the over 5,400 employees that are a part of Stafford County Schools. You educate, take care of, love on, feed, transport, clean up after, after about 32,000 future Oprahs, Steve Jobs, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's, Warren Buffett's, Spike Lee's, and inventors like that of Kevlar, Band-Aids, Bluetooth, and the Super Soaker. All those folks were educated in public schools. Public schools educate and inspire regardless of societal challenges that children have no control over. It allows them to collaborate with a variety of other learners and ideas, gives them options to explore their interest, and provides an opportunity to go beyond the limitations of a prior generation, to become business owners, creators, researchers, skilled employees, and laborers, doing something they love and benefiting our community. Thank you for not picking and choosing who is worthy, but seeing the worth in everyone that attends public school, especially here in Stafford County. Happy Public Schools Week, and thank you to all of you, and especially, I love you, so thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again. My name is Deanna Fisher, Garrisonville District. I would like to emphasize again that I'm asking you to get rid of the waste before asking the Board of Supervisors to raise our taxes even further. I heard the previous speaker give an example of possibly wasting $50,000 a month. We need to fix things like that. I want Stafford schools to be great. I assume most of us do, probably all. Many more families than ever before in Stafford are sending their kids to private school or homeschool because the schools are not providing the education they need. I know of one family in Stafford that had a child bullied so badly that the parents had to pull her out and pay for private school because the bullies were not held accountable and would not stop. I also know of a family that had to hire an advocate to try to get their child's IEP to be correct and followed in elementary school, but now the child's in 6th grade and really struggles to read. How can students learn when they can't read and write? I think school choice is coming soon, based on President Trump announcing that he thinks every state should have it. When the money goes with the student, Stafford schools may take a big hit when even more families can afford alternatives. Then what? Raise taxes 100%, 1,000%? We need a plan to make schools great within our means. Raising taxes too much hurts Stafford, and it's short-sighted not to consider the impact on families of higher taxes. It's easier to keep doing what we're doing, but not sustainable. I recently read there is so much evidence that schools across the country wasted COVID funding in such ridiculous ways that now the Department of Education will require receipts before reimbursing money to the schools. Did Stafford County waste COVID money? I don't know. But we should reduce the waste that exists in Stafford before raising taxes. I spoke at the school board meeting on May 14th last year and brought up concerns about bullying and teachers telling me that schools lose money from Richmond for suspending students and that they lose more money for suspending minority students. If true, this is very concerning because there was a lot of violence, even against teachers in some cases, where the teacher quit because the students were right back in the classroom. I never got a response from the school board regarding those concerns, so I'm asking for a response to that, as well as my concerns and questions from tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, there are no additional speakers signed up.
I'm just making sure that anybody we called that wasn't here, if we just call those names one more time in case they've come in. I don't think anybody has, but
It was Dr. Marsh. I believe it was just Dr. Marsh.
okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our action items for the evening. Item 10.01 is the retroactive approval of an emergency expenditure in the amount of $793,369.30 for the removal of canopies at Rising Star Early Childhood Special Education Center and approval to request reimbursement from the county's school emergency reserve.
Motion to approve the emergency funding for Rising Star.
Second.
Is there any discussion on this topic? Ms. Healy?
I would just ask Dr. Smith to explain very generally some of the issues that were involved there and why it cost so much money, because I think someone looking at this would say, gee, you're going to take some canopies down, why would you spend almost $800,000? But there are some significant factors involved in that, just for the record.
Thank you, Ms. Healy. Happy to share that. Mr. Jason Towery, our Chief Facilities Officer, can give you more detail around that. I'll make sure I don't miss anything.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Yes, so we inspected these canopies in early December and realized that they had reached a stage where they were imminently beginning to fail in some areas. These were large concrete, pre-tensioned concrete canopies that were constructed in the early 60s. At the time, they used asbestos cement materials that was something that had to be dealt with as we removed those. So it required a lot of specialized equipment and remediation, which is pretty intensive because you have to pay specific disposal fees in order to be in compliance with all the environmental guidelines, as well as the placement of the canopies were throughout the campus, making them difficult to get to without a large crane in a couple instances, and the crane itself was fairly expensive, on top of the fact that it was done in a emergency manner over the break while the kids were not there. So it compounded to a large cost. Absolutely, it is a large number.
I just have one, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to say thank you. I know of these issues because Dr. Smith formed the board, but I just wanted to put it on the record that these were circumstances that we have no control over, and that is the reason this cost was escalated and it's so high. So thank you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna make sure, I know at the meeting that we had with the Board of Supervisors that Friday morning or whatever, they had I think I was the one that said, can we send pictures over? Or maybe Daryl had asked for them, Mr. English had asked for them. Did they get pictures of what was standing left and the reason why the decision was made to pull them down?
I know, yes, Ms. Halstead, I know that we've pulled those pictures together. I'll double check to make sure that there was, I'm not sure if there was actually a specific letter sent over with those pictures to the board, but I know that they've been out there amongst our board members, and I know that some of them have been shared, but we can go back through the formal channels again there.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure that they can actually visualize what we were talking about.
Absolutely,
because those things were pretty awful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments?
I would just like to make a quick comment. I spend a lot of time at Rising Star. The canopies were large concrete structures that were crumbling, and they had asbestos, and that's where our littles are. That's where our youngest babies are. And it wasn't safe. And not only were the canopies all around the bus circle where we staged the kids for arrival and departure, but they were all throughout the campus as well. And I'm not a fan of spending $793,000 to tear down structures in a building that we need to replace because it's one of the oldest schools we have in our inventory. And it's just that it was a safety hazard for those kids. And I appreciate the speed that our maintenance department and Dr. Smith took in addressing the issue as safely and quickly as they could.
Mr. Tower, I know you've sat down, so I apologize. Do you believe that, and I feel like I read this, but maybe I'm imagining it, but the cost for the removal was as high as it was because of the asbestos? Had these just been unstable structures, not made of asbestos, it would have been much less expensive to take them down?
Yes, yes, I believe the initial estimate was a couple $100,000 less before we realized that there was asbestos material in there. So rough order of magnitude.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything else on this topic? Then please cast your votes. That motion passes 7-0. Item 10.02, award of a contract in the amount of $311,430.28 to FH Passion for the replacement of canopies at the Rising Star Early Childhood Center, and approval to request reimbursement from the county's school emergency reserve.
Motion to approve the replacement of the canopies since they are an important part of the students' school day.
Second?
Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions or comments on this?
Yes, I think it ties in with what we were talking about before, or to Ms. Healy's point about for the public understanding why we're choosing to replace these canopies and not just leave that space open, because it is an additional expense. I asked the question when it first came to be, why would we need to replace them? The answer I got was satisfactory to me, so I just want to make sure the public understands why we're opting to replace and not just leave it canopy-free.
And can I piggyback off of her? And the replacements that we're putting up are exactly where we've had like they're literally inch by inch replacing the canopies that we took down?
Yes, two great questions. So to the first question from Ms. Halstead, the canopies, this is an open style campus, so the students move back and forth between the buildings all day, between, going up to the main office or cafeteria or gym, various places around the campus. And so it's there, again, as was mentioned before, these are little ones, and they don't always perhaps fall in line and get from point A to B the fastest. So it's there for obviously inclement weather protection from the weather and so forth. And I'm sorry, I just blanked on your question.
Are the replacements like inch by
Yes,
inch covering the
okay.
same places and
Yes,
spaces?
so that's great, I'm sorry, yeah. So we actually are utilizing the existing foundations that are, that were there since the 60s, so we were able to save some money and time by doing that. So these will not be concrete, though, these will be steel fabricated replacement canopies. So.
Any additional questions or comments? Dr. Chase?
Yeah, am I correct? This is, we're going to request the emergency funds that the Board of Supervisors set aside for us last year?
Yes.
And I just want to thank them for putting that money aside.
Absolutely.
I want to clarify one thing on this item and then on the next item as well is in order to, the reason we moved this up on the agenda and got it at this meeting, even though it wasn't on the initial February agenda, is because we want to try to get this work started over spring break. So there is a probability that we could do that. And so we're working to get the materials fabricated. Obviously, as soon as we get that approval, we'll give that notice to proceed. The one tricky situation here is we're going to have, in order to try to do that and achieve a spring break construction schedule, is we do have to give that notice to proceed immediately. We're not going to have time to wait for the Board of Supervisors to give us approval in a few weeks or so. So for this item and the next item, I just want to make sure that's clear. We'll have to use existing funds, whether it's kind of that salary lapse money. We know we have some, or additional state revenue that's coming in. But I just want to make sure that it's very clear that we're going to have to do that. And then we'll get the reimbursement from the county, or we're going to request that reimbursement.
And I can share that I have been in contact with the county administrator to make him aware around what was taking place at the Melchers complex and on the next item, so that they're aware and understand our timeline that we're under at the same time.
Does anyone else have anything? Please cast your votes. Please tally the votes. That item passes 7-0. Item 10.03, award of a contract in the amount of $436,621.20 to Sturda Steel for the demolition and disposal of existing bleachers at Stafford High School football stadium, and for furnishing and installing replacement bleachers, and approval to request reimbursement from the county's school emergency reserve.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Could you
Discussion?
repeat that amount again?
It is $436,620.
Are we supposed to refresh our agendas? Because mine says $428,060. I just want to make sure we got the correct numbers.
Yeah, so I think after it was
Okay.
printed, we updated it earlier today. The live version in board doc should
My
be updated.
apologies, $428,060.
Yeah, that's
The
what
vendor
mine shows.
waived, we got them to waive a fee, so negotiated that.
So that's
down
what it
by
is, the
2%.
$428,60?
428 is the correct number.
Okay, then we saved some money.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, kudos to our procurement team that was able to get that down.
All right, thank you. And I just said one comment. One of the reasons that the timing is critical here is because of graduation. I mean, we have our graduations at the high school, and if we did not have these bleachers at Stafford High School football stadium, then we would have half the capacity for graduation, which I've never been to graduation there because I'm from the north, but I imagine it's pretty much similar, that our bleachers are all full. So I think we owe this to the community to get this done timely so that there is no negative effect on the graduation availability of
Ms.
seats.
Halsted?
I also think since no one's probably reading what's in our board docs or the agendas for tonight, that's important to note that these were not originally put at Stafford High School. These came from a different location, so they are over 60 years old. They were, says it right here, they were originally located at Drew Middle School and are now more than 60 years old. So that information is important to understand. We're not replacing a structure that we just put into place, you know. So if you need this information, it's certainly available for you to see along with it. Are we assured that we will get the bleachers back up and running by graduation for Stafford High?
The vendor is confident by early to mid-May that they'll have it ready, and graduation being the end of May. So it's a tight timeline, which is why we put it on this agenda as well.
We are also going to be in spring sports. Is this going to affect any of the field and track and field, soccer, lacrosse, any of those things?
The use of the bleachers, yes. So fortunately, our spring sports don't have the same participation or
right.
visitors. So
Right.
we usually always have enough space on the home side alone.
I just didn't know, like, equipment-wise, would you be butting in anywhere? Or, I
Yeah.
just want the patrons to
Yep,
be
yep.
safe
I
that are
talked to
moving there.
Mr. Towery about that, along with making sure it doesn't interfere if the school needs to use the field for, health and PE. So a
Right.
lot of times they go out to the field as
Right.
well, so making sure that they're maneuvered in a way that it doesn't interfere.
Okay, thank you.
But for both spring sports and for the school use as well.
Does anyone else have anything else on this topic? Please cast your votes. That motion passes 7-0. Next is adoption of proposed amended policies 5701P, 1108P, and review of policy 1106P, which has no changes. Is there a
Motion to approve.
Second, thank you. Is there any discussion on these items? Okay. Seeing no discussion, please cast your votes. Motion carries 7-0. The last action item on the agenda is the adoption of the school board's FY26 local funding request for presentation to the Board of Supervisors. Is there a motion?
I make,
Motion to approve.
Well,
No.
we have to have it down.
Oh, we have to do the thing.
I make a motion to implement option 3, which I believe was $502,659,363, which is full funding of Phase 4 for the teacher scale, full funding of Phase 2 for the service scale, an increase to the base so that we're more competitive with our surrounding communities, and I can't remember what else it funds. We tried to do as much as we can. We appreciate that our priorities are staff and resources, so we're working on it.
Second. Discussion. Will anyone have discussion?
Oh, what? Go first? Oh. I guess, I'm glad that as a board, we set our priorities. I'm glad as a board, Dr. Smith, who came on late, joined and supported our board's goals. And then I'm glad that we've worked together as a board to talk to each other and to just figure what the next best step is. Just to be super clear, though, this is our funding request. This is obviously not a final adopted budget. That won't happen for a couple more months. So this is just the beginning of a funding request that we have from the Board of Supervisors with what we know thus far from the state, and then what the supervisors have also shared is in their 5-year plan. But we know that there's more work to be done, and so that is why our request is higher. So, thank you.
Ms. Healy, would you like to go next? Or do you have pass? Want to come back to you, or?
I'd like to hear from other member of the board, if
Ms.
that's
Halsted?
okay.
Dr. Chase?
Yeah, we, several years back, met with the Board of Supervisors, and we talked about the fact that our teachers had not been given the kind of salary increase or scale that our public safety personnel in Stafford County had been given. And what we were told and made sense was that we have a lot more employees, so it's a lot more difficult for us to make those corrections in a single year. And so we agreed that we would come up with a 5-year plan. And we have completed years 1, 2, and 3. And I think it's incredibly important that we attempt to do year 4 for our licensed staff. I am also aware that our support staff, that we fell behind. And last year we got phase 1, and this year very much hope that we will get phase 2. Same thing with the teachers, I hope. We don't know. Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Warner?
We know what the needs are. And believe me, I've been fighting for the service scale since I got on the board. We finally have a service scale that at least reflects the market value. We have the Paris scale worked so that it's 50% of our teacher scale. And last year, we did get phase 1. This year, phase 2 is in the budget. We put it there. 71% of our employees live in Stafford County. They are taxpayers here. They take care of our kids and they work here. Our teachers, we know how important it is. Believe me, if it was up to me, and I would fund 100% of the whole budget, everything that we need. We have $59 million in unfunded needs. $59 million. And anybody who thinks that we're not transparent, our budget book is online. You can find it, you can go through it, and as far as we finally asked for a raise, I don't think that there's been a raise since before Ms. Healy was on the board.
Oh,
And-
yes, we were paid, how much were we paid? I think it was $200 a month. When I came on, I didn't even know we got paid, and then they paid us $200 a month, so.
My
There has
husband would
been more.
really like me to have a job that doesn't cost us money. And that, but even at this, it's a pittance in our budget. It's like $30,000 in our budget. And that's, and we've deferred it for 4 years now. So, we,
Right.
Madam Chair, point of order, we don't have a dialogue during our comment period.
Ms. Guy?
we're doing,
Nope.
so, fine. We are putting for the maximum budget request. I think Dr. Smith did an excellent job, and I think with the county administrator and the school board had very good discussions. We have worked together really hard and very well, I think, to try to satisfy as many needs as we can.
Ms. Guy?
Thank you. I do feel the frustration of the beautiful humans in green. I completely understand. This isn't my life-sustaining job, but I need a full-time job. I was a stay-at-home mom before I got on the board. I needed a job. I took the financial hit to serve my community. So I have 3 part-time jobs. So I get it. The $800 a month I get does not accurately reflect the amount of work I do. And the system is set up for privileged humans who don't need income to serve. There are
You know, it's a privilege to be a stay-at-home mom. Then it wasn't. I needed to get a job. But I sit on this board with some women who are very financially privileged too, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in order for you to attract a diverse, and some people don't like diversity, I love it. In order for you to attract a diverse workforce sitting here, a diverse board, you need to pay them more. $800 a month is $10,000 a year. You can't expect to get quality people, well, excuse me, not saying that we're not quality. I'm sorry. What I'm saying is there is a single mom out there who's working, you know, full-time who would love to do this as well. There are people, maybe a small business owner who can't afford to sit on this board. There's a ton of more people who should have the opportunity to serve the community, and they can't because they can't afford to take the pay cut and only make $800 a month when some months you are giving hours and hours and hours of your time, and you have multiple meetings. And so, you know, my husband's gonna kick me when he gets home to find out that I have more debt now than I did when I joined the board because I can't work the way I need to. So that is why we are asking to increase. And this is my last year on the board. So I'm not gonna make the extra money that I'm darn sure voting for. But I would like for Aquia to be represented by someone who can actually get paid a little bit more than the few pennies that I get, because by the third of the month, when I swipe my card, it's not going anywhere. So that's why we are prepared to do that. It's to give an opportunity to more people to serve. I'm going to vote for this option because it's the highest that we can go. It is an ask. I know Ms. Halstead said she doesn't want us to overpromise. It's an ask, but if we don't ask, we definitely won't get. We probably aren't going to get. Budget reconciliation is painful. It's the one thing that gives me nightmares, that keeps me up, that makes me have to eat Tums in the morning and at night because it's horrible. And we see your faces. We don't just see numbers. We do see your faces. And you are right. Sometimes we just keep saying teacher, 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 or license, and you have to stay in our face. Thank you. Call us out. Let us know. Our phone numbers are on the website. Send a text. When you guys are watching the meetings, you know, maybe we can't look at it now, but we'll look at it and then we'll send an email like, oh, we should add something else in. So continue to stay honest. You're shaking your head. I've seen you before. I've seen you at Brookpoint. Stay on us, please. Thank you.
So I wanted to just jump in because I feel like I missed where Dr. Warner and Ms. Guy both said that this is the highest we can go. And I came out here after the discussion back there thinking that there were things that we had talked about that we could consider bringing forward, like some of our, well, I guess I'll back up. When I was running for this seat and I was meeting with school board members, Dr. Jones, who was, I guess, interim or acting superintendent at the time, members of the supervisors, about what it would be like to serve the community and points of frustration and what we could work together. The thing I heard over and over and over again was, by God, get a multi-year plan. Whether it's 3 years, whether it's 5 years, we need to do it because, you know, we do better with a plan. At least we know what direction we're heading. And we've worked together on this board to build a 5-year plan. And we have tried to get as far as we can every year. I am disappointed to not see the differentiated school site allocation here. I am disappointed to not see phase 3 in this ask. I think we heard in the back that it was like 1.2 million to do the differentiated school site allocation. I think the people who work in the schools know what that money is used for and how much further it could stretch if you had funding that was based on the population that was in your school, rather than, you know, a flat rate based on, you know, just a head count. And I also think that phase 3 brings us closer to where we should be in our 5-year plan. To say that we are no longer asking for it, I think kind of brings down the work we did to put into this plan. I don't see something that has substantively changed in this county that says we no longer need to do it. It's not like we went too far last year and all of a sudden we've caught up and we have a moment to catch our breath. We haven't been able to ever do that on any part of our budget where we got ahead and we're able to pause. So I would like us to stay at least asking for what we've said we've needed for as many years as I've been on the board. And as we all know, we will get what we get and we will go as far as we can. But if we are no longer asking for what we said we have needed, we are basically saying that we wasted our time in building a 5-year plan. So I have concerns there. We all know that what we don't ask for, we're going to end up making up for in the future because we are still heading in that direction, and that could have been one more cent, one more dollar, one more person that could have been funded with our ask. So I don't know if this is the best we can do, and those are two things in particular. I think I got distracted, but 1.2 million for differentiated school site allocation. I don't remember if we talked about the difference between phase 2 and phase 3 for the service scale. And I would just like to point out that 50% of the 4 life-saving people we just honored were non-licensed staff.
So are you asking to get that number? I can talk for a while we get it.
I mean,
We have not discussed that, but yes.
I couldn't remember. I know we've discussed it previously. I don't remember if we discussed it recently, but I'm just.
You need to make a clear ask if you want staff to do something. You need to make a clear ask.
Do we have the number?
I don't know that we do. I know it wasn't a part of one of our budget questions in terms of this and looking at that. We did include phase 2 in this. I have not had a question around phase 3. Happy to work with staff to put something together.
How much is phase 2?
I think it's approximately 450,000.
So is there any reason to believe phase 3 would be significantly different?
Let me see if Mr. Fulmer gained.
I mean, I know, and if you're not comfortable answering that, that's fine, but, you know, if we know phase 2 is
I was under the impression that it was on the table when we started the budget process, and then ultimately just phase 2 got into the budget, but I thought that the pieces were, these are all like puzzle pieces, right, that we're trying to fit together to create a budget, and I thought this was one of the pieces we had talked about and didn't fit into this particular picture, and now that we're working on a potentially different picture, I thought it was still kind of laying around, so I apologize.
But this is a living document, so we'll just get it, right?
Right, I don't have the number at my fingertips. It's not something that we calculated going far ahead. In our 5-year plan, we had calculations, so we're going back. But then also, in last year's 5-year plan, when we did phase 1, there was we actually put more money in than we originally thought to help clean that up. So I don't have a very clean phase 3 number at this time, sorry. I will add that part of what'll make the biggest difference for our service scale is the comp and classification study that we're doing, and that was funded in last year's budget. It was kicked off several months ago, but it's not going to be finished, I think, until like April timeframe. And that's where it's really looking at the classification of our employees and is the bottom of our scale appropriate, because we can fix the scale. We did a little bit of that over the last couple of years, but the biggest issue with some of our service scale employees is the starting pay is too low. So as we increase the starting pay, similar to this discussion we had on the license scale, is we need to fix the bottom of the scale first, and that's what the comp and class study will help us identify where we're falling behind there, and if employees are in the right pay grade.
So in our budget discussions in the back, we did talk about, especially for the differentiated site allocations, about pots of money going or whatever and not necessarily using the whole thing. So, and just stop me, I'm just asking because she brought up the $1.2 million. So if we were to add the $1.2 million, is there a possibility that between now and the time in the future, we could talk about what phase 3 looks like, or a partial implementation of phase 3 with a certain amount of funds out of that 1.2? Because if we added it in, we don't necessarily need to allocate it directly to currently, right? Directly to the differentiated site. We could actually just ask for that 1.2 million and then do calculations later, should we get it, for an implementation of phase 3, partial, full, whatever that may look like. Is that possible, is what I'm asking, or is that feasible?
So I would ask that we differentiate and tell me how you would want the 1.2 allocated. If you're going to say it's
$600,000 to service scale and $600,000 to differentiated school site allocations. We could do that, but we've got to, well, as soon as you adopt or approve, I should say, we're going to turn around and create the actual budget book. And so we need to know where we're allocating those funds instead of just leaving it in there in a general pot to be allocated
So
later.
one of the things we discussed was also just doing, since Title I funds are available at the elementary level, we talked about allocating to the middle school and high school. Carter's behind you.
Yeah, we'll have to calculate phase 3 before I give you a number on it. We can probably more easily calculate a school site allocation number if you want to say middle school versus high school, because I have that broken down. But we would need time to calculate what we would do, a specific amount of funds for service scale or.
What is the middle school, high school portion?
I want to know what the. Give me 30 seconds.
I know he doesn't know. Oopsie.
So the 1.2 for elementary schools, it was 343,000. The middle schools were 253 in the high school because it's the number of students. So your high school number is higher, it goes up to 576.
So like 830,000 roughly for middle school and high school.
Yes, 829,525.
So I just have a couple of comments. I don't know if that's a discussion this board wants to have about the 1.2 being added in terms of trying, I think we're already asking for something that we're gonna get hit for anyway. But that's the basis of my comments. Expectation management for me is really big when it comes to the budget. If you've been listening to anything I've said over the last 3 years, and what you've heard me say is budget time is just an untenable, constant shot in the dark. We're making guesstimations and whatever on money that may or may not come to us, may or may not exist. We may get 8 million from the state. The state could change that number. I mean, I get it. We've got a sort of a consensus that we need to increase thing, but at the time that we talk about this budget, we talk about what the best intention of this board is to try and do right by the people with some very stark realities. And I get it. Empathy is empty at this point. We can sit up here all we want and say how sorry we are and how much we feel your pain for whatever the reasons are. There's nothing worse than feeling undervalued. And we all know, I can't swear, but my dad used to say money talks and BS walks. So I grew up my whole life knowing that way because people want to be paid what they're worth. And we certainly have seen what everyone who's in the public school system in general, how much they are worth. They hang in under circumstances that are not right. I don't know how else to define that. But I really want everyone to understand the intricacy heading into this process because every year this board ends up being beaten over the head and blamed for things that are not true. That comes from several things. That comes from this board having the courage to ask for $502 million in funding across the street, knowing that we're going to get criticized and ridiculed and all of the other things. And it will be done by our counterparts. It will be done by the people, the residents, the constituents. So we understand all of that. We understand that nobody wants their taxes raised. Nobody wants to have to pay more money. Nobody wants their taxes raised and get a raise that's like whatever amount of percent, and then all of a sudden your tax increase, your raise is already eaten up in your taxes. Chris, you can sit down. I'm not talking directly to you. I don't have any questions for you. I mean, if you want to stay there, it's great, but you're making me a little nervous because I'm not talking directly to you, and I feel like I am now, and I'm not, so.
I'm going to stay here just to make you nervous.
I know, like you're stressing me out a little bit. Sit down, for the love of God, sit down. No.
But I want to make
I think
a
she does want you to
clarifying.
sit down.
Yeah. before I sit down, on the school site allocation, we would not want to differentiate and do partial funding for middle school and high school versus elementary school because with our title funding, we're actually not allowed to supplant. So by doing differentiated funding based on economically disadvantaged, we would be, if we did that for middle school and high school, you have to do the same thing for elementary school, or our title funding would be,
Thank you for catching that.
yeah.
So also, I just want to point out, I was in the middle of a very emotional moment, and he just went full-on accountant there again and just brought it right back to the numbers. Like, I don't want to talk about breaking up a moment or anything, but if there was a moment that was broken, Chris, that's it, right there.
Can
Now
I,
see-
can I, can I break
we're all
up your
good to
moment
go.
for a second, just to the other beautiful women on this board? If we are going to add anything else over the $502 million, I do not, I love school site differentiated, blah, 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 I love it all, but I feel like if we're gonna add anything, it should go to the compensation. So I don't think I would support anything that adds to what we already brought that's not going to the people.
Well, now she just stole my line. What is happening? I'm telling you.
Sorry, I'm just
So that is, so I would just like to put on the record that this is a process. Tonight starts that process. Ms. Healy and I were speaking in the back. I feel like it should be, we should be working hand in hand, and I do hope that this is what happens with our counterparts across the street. Ms. Randall and I have meetings set up tomorrow with our counterparts to meet and discuss things with them, and we hope that that goes well and that it is well received. But at the end of the day, nobody on this board makes a decision that wants to cut anything out of anyone's life that supports them living nothing but their best lives. However, when that final number comes back, we are oftentimes left with the hard choices. So it is a lot of patience, it is a lot of advocacy again, it is a lot of really letting everyone know how you feel. And I understand that that's hard, that self-advocacy every year, having to go and say over and over and over again how great you are, and can you please pay us for that greatness. There are at least 7 women on this board who see it, and we are gonna do the best we can. I agree with Maya. I think if we're gonna add any money to it, if we're gonna look at $1.2 million as an additional, that we look to put it in for the phase 3. But please know, we will fight for it. It just doesn't mean we'll get it, and that's the really hardcore reality. I'm willing to add it as I don't know how we do it, substitute motion or whatever it might be. I'm willing to fight for it, I'm willing to ask for it, but I just really want everyone's minds to be focused in the right place, which is we will fight the best we can, you'll fight with us, and in the end, it's really up to them.
Correct what I said. I said that we make 10,000 a year because that's what I thought we made, but we made 12. I just want to say I wasn't lying, I made a mistake.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to discuss? Ms. Healy?
Thank you for letting me hear from my colleagues. I actually was leaning towards scenario 2, which was the full funding for the licensed staff. But after the discussion at the work session and the public comment as well, I'm going to be supporting the scenario 3. One thing that was particularly important for me that came out in our discussion was that the $1,000 that scenario 3 adds to the base pay is in line with our 5-year plan. If we had been going with our 5-year plan up to date, that's where we would be. I was not impressed with just pulling $1,000 out of the air because that's not the way I look at monies. But to know that that's where we would have been had we been able to keep up with our plan, that to me is significant, as well as the recruitment and retention. And it is important. I mean, back in the day, Stafford County was the #1 county that people wanted to come to. I mean, we had the leading salaries, we had the best facilities, we had, fantastic mentors here, that veteran, teachers. We had it all. And, we don't have it all right now. We have great people, but the question is, how long can our people afford to work here? And, you know, to a certain extent, that is going to control, you know, our retention as well as our recruitment. I would support adding in the phase 3 of the support staff. And I agree with Ms. Halstead. I don't want anybody to think that what we approve tonight is done. And, but this is what we see as the needs of the school system and what we are going to advocate for. And the reason I want to put that in is we're still behind with the support staff. I mean, we're on phase 3 instead of phase 4. It was, oh, a big deal. Last year we got to phase 1. Finally, now, you know, we're on phase 2, so we're halfway there. I mean, I'd love to be all the way there, but that's not possible. We all know next year, with opening a high school and 2 elementary schools, we're going to need more money. So if we don't put it in now, I'm afraid that it's just going to be kicked down the road in that can. That can, and I'm unfortunately well aware of kicking cans. I would like to say that what concerns me is the funding generally for Stafford County students. That we are so low. When you look at those numbers, I just can't fathom how we could be, what are we now, 117 out of 132, 133 districts in the Commonwealth of Virginia, 116 more fund more than us. I mean, there's a couple handful left, which to me is embarrassing, you know, as a resident of Stafford County. This is not saying raise the taxes so they can go to schools. It's saying make schools a priority because there are choices. I mean, of course, our advocacy is for the schools. That's why we're here. As Ms. Guy pointed out, we sometimes get a minimum wage, sometimes not, which, by the way, I'm one of the people that is not going to be supporting a pay raise for us, but we've had this discussion. But, you know, I consider my work a public service. Well, it's a public service. I have to give up time, I give up my job to do this. But this has been my choice for a long time. 25 years, that's right. Just think of how much I could have, but anyway, that's not here. But that's a choice that we will be making individually for whatever reason. And I think, as Ms. Guy pointed out, ultimately, it is a very small portion of this budget, but it is, in my view, symbolic. But I would like to add phase 3 for the support staff in here. I understand, you know, your passion for the site-based allocations, but I don't feel that there's going to be enough resources for that. And I think, for me, the staff compensation is the more, you know, the more of a priority right now. We are going to have additional, you know, resources. A couple of the speakers mentioned the additional EOL teachers that we're going to have. That's not a luxury. That's what the state is mandating that we have. We will be meeting the minimum state mandates when we add those teachers. And it's because of the population that we serve. It's not by choice. It's not a luxury. It's not, you know, adding anything to the schools for it. It's providing the teachers. But, you know, overall, this is somewhat of an aberration for me to be supporting such a high increase, particularly from what the superintendent, you know, suggested. Dr. Chase is there. Whoa, really? but I think it sends a message, and it sends a message about what are our needs, and somebody has got to open the eyes of our funding body to, you know, what we have here in Stafford County. We have the luxury of having an amazing staff who go above and beyond every day. And that's why we're able to do our job. not because they're getting paid, what they should be getting paid. And they've done it for the public service, so we're asking them to take a look at schools at this point. But I don't know, Dr. Smith, how we can get that number, but I would like to add that to this, this request. Or do we have something? We know what phase 2 is.
We are going to call about a 10-minute recess because they are getting that number and we will reconvene.
Okay, but I would like to add that in, so this is, I appreciate hearing from everybody, and I did listen. But when we come back and get that number.
I
Well,
do
I
have one
can't
more
make a
thing to say,
motion
though.
because we don't have figures.
Right.
Pause, do they?
I just have one more thing to say too, though, if I could, just on this, I think we overlooked the.
There goes our
I know, I'm
recess.
sorry, I know I overlooked the fact, but Dr. Smith, also to your credit, you did just start here like 4 minutes ago and enter directly into the budget. And so whereas you're still learning about us and the struggles that we've had in trying to piece this together, we actually do appreciate all the things. And we also appreciate you didn't give us the presentation twice, but anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But we do appreciate, what it takes to jump on board and try and learn a 33 school system and all of its needs and meet all of the personalities and the people and try to build a budget around that. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Okay, 5-minute recess, 9:09.
If I had two.
Thank you for your patience as we did some late-night math. I understand. Ms. Irish, did you have some comments you'd like to make?
So I just had one thing to say. I know I haven't been here that long, and I don't know all the complexities that go into what you take to the other side of the street, but as someone in the audience had said previously, we don't want to undervalue our students and our staff. We all deserve to take, we don't want, sorry, it's been a long 15 minutes.
That's because it was actually 30, but that's all right.
When we take that budget over across the street, it shouldn't undervalue the students and staff needs that are there. It should be what we need. And then it'll go down, I'm sure, because they won't get all the funding. And I encourage everyone who's interested in the budget to listen to all the meetings and all the compensation that goes into it, because it's a lot, and there's a lot of stuff that's repeated and repeated. And there's a lot that really goes into it if you're actually looking behind the scenes, and everyone is trying their best to do. But I think that the request should be what we need, and everything that we need for everyone, and then work down from there.
Thank you. Ms. Healy?
Madam Chair, I have a friendly amendment to the budget amendment. Can we put this on the screen? In effect, what it does is to add an amount that is approximately $550,000 at the most, which would bring our support staff to phase 3 instead of phase 2. Now, keeping in mind, where we plan to be, they'd be at phase 4. Can't go that far, but I would like to put them at phase 3, and that will keep this in the running when we have our next discussion on the budget. And I'm going to be optimistic that perhaps we will be heard, and there will be a recognition of the need to fund Stafford County schools and the importance of the schools to the community. That's what we need to make our case. So I would like to thank all the speakers who spoke tonight, because I think, particularly at the public hearing on the budget, that certainly was influential to me. And, normally I'm, pretty objective, very conservative, particularly where dollars are concerned, but I think this needs to be done. If it's not done now, it won't get done. I'm even, more concerned, as I mentioned before, with opening the new schools, the additional costs we're gonna have there. And I think in today's world, our staff needs to know that we care and that they are valued and how important they are to the school system, to the community, to the students, and the families, because we're gonna need a lot of support. And I think we're doing our job to support our staff, who is gonna be there to support the students and the families and the communities. So that was a long, friendly amendment. But the bottom line figure would be 502 million. Where are we?
Right here, 503.
Oh, I'm
No,
sorry.
it's up there.
Well, the bottom line was 502,659,363. That was the original number, and that would change to a ask of $503,109,363. And the superintendent will allocate that among the funds in, as needed to bring the support staff in each of those categories up to phase 3.
I'll accept that amendment.
I accept that amendment.
All right, is there any other discussion, or are we hearing none? We will vote on this motion. That vote passed unanimously. Dr. Smith, superintendent comments.
All right. Thank you. I will try to keep my comments somewhat brief, given the time of the evening. I do want to thank you for your engagement and your work with me as your new superintendent through this budget process. Coming in, I think maybe Ms. Halstead said earlier, coming in and presenting the budget with just under 3 or 4 weeks under my belt was a challenge, and I'm excited where we are and excited about the budget you've adopted tonight. So I'd like to begin with my remarks with an update regarding our 24-25 calendar change due to the recent weather events that required closure of our schools. March 21st is now a full regular instructional day. That will be a Y day, and we did, for our secondary students, we did work with our principals and schools to look at our missed instructional time, and so a lot of that time had been Y day, so it will be a Y day for our secondary school students. And talking about the inclement weather, the safety of our students, our staff, and our families is our highest priority, and that begins with our roads assessment. Anytime we believe there could be inclement weather, we take a look at the forecast, we work with emergency management, just to really make sure we have the most updated information so we can make the right decision to prioritize the safety of our students and our staff and our families. And we will continue to work through that. We understand that no decision is perfect for everyone. Some folks might feel we have closed or we should have stayed opened. I wish we had the perfect solution every time, but that's just not the case. And I do just want everyone to know that these calls are never made lightly. We take them seriously. We use the most up-to-date information to make sure we can keep everyone safe, but we also can keep folks in school and learning as much as possible. And so that balance is a challenge, and we'll continue to do that and take that seriously. So enough about that. With that, I'd like to move on to some exciting news. We had a lot of recognitions tonight already, but we have a couple others that I would like to bring to your attention. I want to recognize some of the outstanding accomplishments of our students and staff. Congratulations specifically to Reshab Urs, a 7th grader from Rodney Thompson Middle School, who won this year's division-wide spelling bee with the word cholera. Draven Williams, an 8th grader from Dixon Smith Middle School, earned the runner-up position. Both young men did very well, and I'm very proud that all the participants who demonstrated outstanding spelling at the event. Good luck to both Reshab and Draven as they compete in the regional spelling bee at James Monroe High School on March 1st. I'm also pleased to share that Jolene Lee, a senior at Mountain View High School, has been selected as one of Virginia's nominees for the 2025 U.S. Presidential Scholars Program in the specialty area of visual arts. Her exceptional accomplishments earned her this prestigious recognition, and she's one of the nation's highest honors for high school students. Each year, only about 161 students across the nation are selected based on their academic achievements, their leadership qualities, and contributions to their communities. Jolene's nomination reflects her exceptional talents and accomplishments, and she received a letter of invitation to apply to the U.S. Department of Education in January and will be notified in May if selected, and we wish her the best of luck with that. FXBG Advance named Cynthia Lucero Chavez its Government Leader of the Year for her dedication to strengthening McKinney-Vento operations, ensuring that students experiencing housing instability have the support they need to stay in school and to thrive. Her work removes barriers, connects families to critical resources, and creates opportunities for students to focus on their education despite the challenges they face. This award is a testament to her passion for putting students first, and we're grateful for her leadership and service. We'll also extend our sincere thanks to FXBG Advance for recognizing the important work and honoring Cynthia with this award. On Saturday, February 1st, we partnered with the Stafford County Parks and Recreation to host the 4th Annual Health and Wellness Fair. The event brought more than 800 staff, students, and families for a day focused on wellness and bringing them together. Attendees participated in the Polar Pals races, including fun runs for younger students and a 5K open to all, with dozens of students joining in. Nearly 60 community partners showcased resources from across 8 domains of wellness. This event was a true team effort with the support of payroll and benefits, nutrition services, operations and maintenance, student support services, and staff from Colonial Forge and Mountain View High Schools. And they really demonstrated the power of collaboration in promoting health and well-being. I attended this event, and it was a wonderful event for all to enjoy. Now, a few quick updates on my entry plan. Things are going well, and I am pleased about how the community has come out and shared the feedback. February 12th, I got an opportunity to visit Richmond and meet with our legislative delegation. While these meetings were initially just focused on building those relationships, we had great dialogue around the board's legislative priorities, and I look forward to continuing these relationships to move our work and advocacy forward. So far, we have hosted 14 connection sessions, including 2 virtual events. We have a couple more sessions available, and it'll be coming up. The first one is March 10th at Hartwood Elementary School, and our final connection session will be on March 17th at Ferry Farm Elementary. Really working with our connections to make sure that we hear from each and every voice in our community. We have provided opportunities for folks to submit their comments electronically if they can't attend in person or one of their virtual events. And so far, we have over 425 responses so far, so excited about that. And that feedback form will remain open for anyone unable to attend or have other thoughts they'd like to contribute. We're already seeing some common themes in areas that we excel and areas that we can improve. One thing that is clear across all the sessions, I can say, is that our teachers and staff are deeply committed to our students. I hear time and time again about how they go above and beyond to support our students. I've heard great feedback about the strong communication at the elementary level, the variety of academic and extracurricular opportunities offered, and the creative use of resources to make sure the most of our funding that we have available. I've also heard about our mentor programs and how we're supporting our new teachers and staff to make sure they're successful and we retain the brightest and the best. And I want to make sure that I also highlight the sense of teamwork that is across our staff and the work that's taking place. At the same time, I do want to share that there's a couple of areas that I've already identified that I think we can make some positive changes. Teacher retention and recruitment must remain a top priority, with concerns about competitive pay and our workload balance. Transportation issues continue to create some frustration for some families, and our inconsistent communication across schools I know needs to be addressed. So I've heard also about facility upgrades, more consistency in special education services, and more behavioral support for our students. So 2 areas I've identified for some immediate attention, and the first is how we provide services to our students with disabilities. As you may remember, a few years ago we implemented a Back to Base initiative, and we're currently reviewing the needs of our students who require more specialized services and making sure that we have our staffing levels to determine what programmatic changes we can make for the upcoming year. And this is just an area that I'm initially seeding that might require some immediate attention. I've also been hard at work reviewing the transportation study findings, and we've put together an interdepartmental team to work on this study and the recommendation to make sure that we can address them in a timely manner. I want to make sure that we address each of these recommendations in a thoughtful way. And however, I did recently share with the board at the February 18th work session that an area that I think that we can really improve our work in transportation, and this will lead to increased route efficiency and better serve our families, and this is having a 2-tier elementary schedule for next year. We believe this change would make better use of our resources, immediately reduce the number of buses required each tier, increase the online arrival for buses, and provide a much more reliable service for our families. We are in the process of collecting feedback from our impacted parents and families, and a survey for elementary staff will be shared on February 28th. I look forward to reviewing this feedback as we are committed to exploring every possibility to enhance our transportation system. With support from the board, I look forward to bringing back additional updates on my entry plan and my findings from the connection sessions. I do want to ensure that any changes we implement are well informed in the best interest of our students and staff. And with that, I will conclude my remarks by encouraging everyone to follow along with the continued progress. I hope to see you at a connection session or contribute to the online feedback as we continue to move forward. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our board member comments and any committee reports you have to give us updates on. Dr. Chase.
Yeah, so not a huge amount, but I did want to say that the Commonwealth Governor's School Governing Board had their annual retreat this past weekend, and we worked on developing the strategic plan for the program for the next couple of years. And it was great to see my colleagues from Spotsylvania and Caroline County, and Dr. Amahandran, the new director of CGS, did a phenomenal job. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Warner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Smith for his patience with us. We may be messy, but we do get there eventually. I think our board has worked really hard to try to meet all the needs in the budget with limited resources, and I think we've worked together really well, and I just want to thank my fellow board members. This last few weeks, I've had the opportunity to attend the Spark Conference. I was really pleased with the professional development opportunities for our service staff, and I served lunch, and nobody yelled at me. And I thought some of the classes were really good. There were classes on AI, there were classes on meal planning. It was really well done, and I appreciate the effort that our staff goes through to put these programs together, and I appreciate the fact that our service staff had the opportunity to get professional development and get some really good instruction in some areas. I attended the social studies showcase at Stafford High School, and we have some pretty amazing students, and I was really impressed with some of the projects that they took on. I went to the CGS board meeting with Dr. Chase because I will be the alternate on the CGS board now, and I was really impressed with the program. And Dr. Alejandro has done an excellent job pulling us together and developing the strategic plan, and I think she was very, very good at what she does. I think that's probably about it for me, but like I said, I do want to thank my fellow board members for working hard to try to put the budget together, and I want to thank Dr. Smith for his patience, and I'm hoping he doesn't leave us anytime soon.
Ms. Randall?
Sure, okay. First of all, I would like to thank Gwen and Carter. Huge congratulations, and Chris, for your team work in not only the clean audit, but also the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. I think that is so exciting, and I'm really, really proud that we have such a talented team and hard-working team. I also wanted to let everyone know the Stafford Education Foundation on April 19th is going to have a hippity hop race at Pratt Park from 8 to 11. That's right after we finish doing our budget reconciliation, I believe. So maybe you want to run it out a little bit. I have my ATI meeting tomorrow. We're finishing up our budget process, beginning our review process of how we're gonna review the program and the director, working with Dr. Smith as well. I also visited Spark. I would like to thank Angie Margot because it was a little idea that she had that grew into a really big event that benefits so many of our staff in the county that when I walked in the room and they asked, have you ever been to a conference? And only 2 people out of over 30 raised their hands. It was just so nice to know that that's something that we're doing. Let's see, what else? I have had fun visiting Dixon Smith, Rocky Run, Gale, Grafton, and Stafford High School. This week I will be visiting Stafford Middle and Hartwood. Next week, North Stafford, and the list will keep going. I just really appreciate talking to the administrators in these buildings and just kind of, we get the high-level information, but it's just different when you go in the schools and you start talking. And also, I'll get to Ferry Farm to meet the new principal when she starts. Speaking of new, I'm on the Parks and Rec Committee. We have, they have retired their administrative assistant, their director, and their assistant director. So I got to meet the new director, Mr. Eugene Lowe. He will be the director of Parks and Rec and Tourism. The Rock Hill Dog Park is just waiting for a little bit more warmer weather to finish up. The Belmont Park has proffered property now of 5 acres for a gymnastics center, and they're hoping to get added to this CIP this year. Musselman Park is also seeing movement, but I have also invited Mr. Lowe to have conversations with schools as we move forward with rebuilding Drew to see if there's a way that we can serve Parks and Rec as well. And I think that's it. Yes, thank you.
Ms. Healy?
I'm sure you'll all be happy to know I'm going to pass tonight in the interest of time, because it is 1 minute before 10 o'clock. But I do want to thank the schools in Rock Hill for these lovely gifts in our basket, and all the spiritware and trinkets, which I say in a fun sense because I love trinkets. I know Ms. Alston and I were trying to figure out some of them, so they may get new uses than they ever intended to be. But thank you, and I will look forward to visiting the schools in my district and wearing my new spiritware. Thank you.
Ms. Halsted?
I will be brief. Just kidding.
Chris, please come stand up.
Wait, let me get my timer. Hang on. That'll only make me talk longer because I'll be nervous and not know what to do. No. So I actually was a judge at the history, or the history day or whatever. It's the second year in a row I've done it. And it is really because there's so much crazy stuff that goes on throughout the week that we hear. And like to really see the talent of the kids and the ingenuity and the work that they're doing come to life is, I don't want to say it's the best day of the year, but it's close to it because it's fun. Also, it does feel really bad being like I get the participation trophy. That's all I'm saying. Like, I don't want my kid to get one, but I want to give every kid one. I don't know why. But anyway, so I really I have one comment tonight to make. And you know me, I don't like to talk about too much stuff other than the real world. But lately, what I've noticed is I've come off of a lot of Facebook sites that are directly related to Stafford County because the negativity on these sites is so pervasive. It's awful. It is such a downer to go on there for a weather call or whatever and just see the way people come out and just hit each other with stuff. It's just negative. And it's really upsetting for me to see that we treat each other. So I remind parents you're an example for your children, and they are watching what you do every day. They are hearing your words, and they are repeating them. And I assure you, if you think you're typing on Facebook and they don't know or see it, they do. So please just be careful with how you approach every day. Decisions that are made at the school level are not made lightly. They're not made with any inconsideration for everyone. I think it's quite the opposite. We do try to consider everyone across the board. The other disturbing trend I've noticed on Facebook is a lot of people posting anonymous things on there that have some very highly personal information about things that are going on at the school level that should come directly to the school board or the superintendent. Some of these things are reportable. Some of these things should be brought to our attention and not to Facebook. So if anyone is listening or sees these things on a Facebook site, please get to the superintendent and screenshot that. I personally have received a couple of screenshots of things that were maybe, whatever, but anonymous posts on Facebook don't help us, help you. So please, please, if you see it, screen capture it, make sure that the superintendent is aware that it's out there, or a board member is aware that it's out there, so that if we do need to address it or it comes back up again, we're not just blindsided by us. Because believe it or not, we're not spending all day scrolling down Facebook waiting to see. It is so important for some of these things that are out there that the school board actually has an idea of what's going on. Don't assume we've seen it. Don't assume we know about it. Get it to us, please, so that we can try and, if we need to, figure it out. At the minimum, Daniel definitely needs more work to do. I'm just kidding. But at the minimum, I know.
With 2 eyes.
Yeah, 2 eyes, that's right. So anyway, you know me, and my big focus is on mental health. It's amongst the schools, but the parents as well. And our kids need us to be better. So I'm just asking that we are better.
Ms. Guy.
They told me to write my stuff down, so I didn't ramble, because I'm a rambler. So I just want to say congratulations to Gwen, huh? No, I didn't do a haiku. Gwen, Carter, and Chris, congratulations on your clean audit. I'm so glad you guys know how to count, because I cannot. And I want to thank everyone for all the swag that y'all gave us. That was so sweet. I do not think that there should be any accolades for board members, School Board Member Month. But it feels really good to get it anyway, so I really appreciate it, because I don't get stuff like that at home. All right, so as we close tonight's meeting, because I wrote, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge Black History Month. This is a time to reflect on the strength and the resilience and contributions of Black Americans, past and present, who have shaped our nation, often in the face of immense challenges. Education has always been at the heart of that struggle, from the fight for access to quality schools to the ongoing work for ensuring every child, regardless of background, has the opportunities that they deserve. That's exactly why we are so committed to the work that we do here. I know there is a concern in our community about funding fears, and that we are looking to raise taxes. First of all, the school board does not set your tax rate. And let me be clear, our goal is not to ask more of our community, but to ensure that we can continue to provide an adequate education and facilities for our students, and a semblance of a respectable pay to our staff. And I say a semblance because at the end of the day, it's not respectable. We need each other. We all need each other. It doesn't matter if you're an independent, Republican, or Democrat. You can come here and speak to the policies that you can't stand. Attack policies. Do not attack people. And if you do it in front of Maya Guy, she will ask you to stop. Please attack a person's policy. I work with Republicans every day, and I'm actually really happy that I've been working with you guys. I've learned immensely, empathy and just a different thought process. No, I don't got no patience. I haven't learned patience yet. I'm still, God ain't finished with me yet. I'm working on it, but, and you've been so supportive of me as well, right? So, because we attack the policy and not the people. And that's what a leader does. So whether you're, a civilian, or whether you're on the school board, you lead somewhere, whether it's in your community or in your home. As you say, our children are watching. Teach your children how to civically engage, because it's embarrassing for grown adults to come here and to show themselves, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. I will also try to keep it brief. I also participated in Spark, which I think is just so much fun to see an auditorium completely filled with the people who, are the grease of the wheels of the machine, because that is the perfect word for it. There were tons of meetings over the past month as far as budget and PTO and PTA meetings, CIP meetings. So being out in the community is, of course, my favorite thing. I also wanted to I did not get the opportunity to embarrass my son at his wrestling match today, so Sebastian, I'm sorry. Or my daughter at her chorus concert this evening, so Anastasia, I'm sorry. So maybe mentioning them here will be the sufficient amount of parental embarrassment that should have gone at the school level today. I also wanted to mention to other fellow rising kindergarten parents out there, March 17th, you can register your children for kindergarten. That is less than a month away, and I can't believe it. I will be first in line at my child's elementary school because he cannot wait to be part of Stafford County Public Schools. I also want to reflect on the entire budget process and the impact on our community. I heard several times, back in the day, we were ranked this, or we had this, or it looked like this. And back in the day, our schools were less crowded. We had fewer vacant positions, and we had an increased local share of our budget coming from locally. And it is because of kind of the trend we were on that we actually came together and built a 5-year plan. So we could take the steps and put the infrastructure in place to get back to where we want to be or move towards where we want to be. It is no secret that a 5-year budget potentially could outlast anyone on this board, because any one of us is only here for 4 years. And to build a 5-year budget leaves a blueprint for what our goals were so that people can carry those forward, whether you're only going to be here for one term or you're going to be here for 25 years. We all want to have a roadmap for what we think is best for Stafford County. And routinely we hear that our 5-year plan is not sustainable, or the increases we need to run this school system are not sustainable. And as a board member, as a community member, and as a parent of soon-to-be 4 children in Stafford County Public Schools, what I see as not sustainable is to run a school division with so many vacant positions, to run a school system that has I was going to say crumbling infrastructure, but I didn't want to go completely there, and to put and expect so much more on our staff to make up for the fact that we have unfilled positions and crumbling in infrastructure and heating that we're trying to keep working. It is not sustainable to pretend any of what we're asking for is a surprise, that the growth is a surprise when we know years in advance how many approved and unbuilt houses there are, and when we have staff on both sides of the seat who are of the street who are excellent at estimating how many people will live in this community and will send students to these schools or to utilize the libraries or the parks or all of the other things, and to pretend that we do not know that we are legally obligated to welcome every single child who resides in Stafford County into our schools should they wish to enroll. And while they are here, to make sure they receive the best possible education that we can deliver. And I guess at the end of the day, all of that wraps up into it is no longer sustainable to expect above average results with below average investment. And that's why I'm glad we moved in the direction we did tonight, and that we will continue to move in this path for the rest of this 5-year plan and into the next. So that is what was frustrating me today, and I'm glad I got it off my chest. And our announcements are March 11th, we have a work session at 5 p.m. and a monthly business meeting at 7. On March 12th, we will be presenting the budget we passed this evening to the Board of Supervisors at 5 o'clock at the ABC conference room. And on March 18th, we will have a work session at 7 p.m., though it might be earlier. Is that the one we might move? March 18th work session right now is scheduled for 7 p.m. Okay, so we are adjourned.